Chapter 132 Rejection. Gu Chungrui was silent for a moment before he asked, "They didn't say what they came for?" With sixth Aunt Gu helping out, I didn't give them a chance to speak. That's good. Ignore them. We won't be lending any money to anyone. If we can't reject them, just give them some tofu slices or dried yuba. I'm fine with it. I'm just afraid that they'll pester you nonstop. Gu Chungrui laughed and suggested, "If we really can't say no, how about we buy some land from them?" Buy land? That's right. Don't forget that they have 100 acres of land. If they want money, they can exchange their land for it. That's true, but don't reveal that we have that much money. Don't worry, we can buy a maximum of 6 acres of land with 50 taels of silver. That will be enough for us to plant some vegetables to supply our restaurant. All right, it's up to you then. Wash your hands. The food is ready," Zhouing said as she turned around and went to the kitchen. On the other hand, after Gu Qingji and Gu Qingye returned home, Father Gu immediately stopped them. "Chengji, Chengye, what did your uncle say? Can you borrow some silver from the oil mill?" "No, Uncle said the oil mill business isn't doing well this year. Besides the clan's expenses, the clan also needs a new boat, and they definitely won't lend it to us again." Gu Qingye shook his head. "The problem is that most clan members are unhappy with us because of that boat. They don't support the patriarch to lend us any silver as well." Gu Qingji added, "They're all a bunch of ingrates. Back when our family was in its prime, they basked in our glory too. Now, they are showing us this attitude when we need their help. Such a disappointment." Mrs. Liu said indignantly. "You shut up." Father Gu replied in a bad mood. Although they had helped the clan in those years, it was only on the surface level, and they barely helped anyone on an individual level, at most, just slightly more than other villagers. However, they took their land back after they came back. In addition to Gu Shengru's incident and the shipwreck, there would definitely be many who had negative opinions about them. Their oil mill could only use ox carts or rent someone else's boat to transport oil after the shipwreck. How could they have any positive image of their family? Then what do we do now? Should we change our jobs? Our family really doesn't have enough income. Mrs. Liu wanted to say something but hesitated. The main issue was that there was little money left in the family. She didn't want to fork out any more of her personal savings, or else what would she provide for her children? Father Gu turned to look at her and asked, "Change my profession? Do you have any ideas? Take your time to think about it. There will be something. Can't you see that Chungrui and his wife are selling tofu quite well? I recall that Mother's snacks were delicious, as was Second Aunt's porridge. Why don't we open a small shop?" Gu Qingye suddenly suggested. "Eateries? It's fine if we make it for ourselves, but we'll be dead exhausted if we sell it." Mrs. Liu unhappily glared at him. Father Gu disagreed with his idea too. He didn't want others to think that he was a man who lived off his woman. Also, the issue was that selling eateries would never make a fortune. He had to find another way to buy a boat. However, on second thought, selling eateries would temporarily relieve their financial issues. He nodded and said, "I think you and sister-in-law can give it a try. Didn't you manage a shop when you were in the capital? You can earn some pocket money this way." "But darling, managing an eatery shop is dirty and tiring. How can we do that kind of work?" Mrs. Liu said in horror. "What do you mean that kind of work? Didn't you envy Chungrui and his wife selling tofu? Do you think it's easy to grind beans and cook tofu every day?" Father Gu snorted coldly at this point and reminded her, "You used to think that cooking was difficult, but now you are used to it. Wouldn't it just be a thing to get used to?" Chapter 133 Acceptance. Mrs. Liu's face turned red when she heard this, but she couldn't say anything to refute it. "It's settled then. We'll try to rent a small shop in town. At least it's better than you guys fighting at home every day." Father Gu immediately decided. "Then why not Mrs. Guo and Mrs. Sun go? They are more skilled at cooking than us." After hearing this, Father Gu looked at her deeply and said, "So you're willing to carry water, gather firewood, and serve the whole family at home every day? Just go and try it for 2 days. I'll ask Mrs. Guo to try if you can't do it." When Mrs. Liu heard this, she immediately thought of her shoulder, which had been swollen for several days from carrying buckets of water over her shoulders. She immediately shrank and replied, "All right, I will give it a try." She then looked at Father Gu and suggested, "By the way, darling, Chungrui should be back by now. Do you want to go and look for him? Maybe he has some silver in his hands. I'm not going. Don't you have any ideas about him? Father Gu went back to his study after that. Previously, Gu Chungrui treated the two brothers' injuries and even gave them medicine for free. It would be worth quite a lot of money, and the young couple's small business couldn't even earn much. He wouldn't be able to get anything if he went now, and more importantly, he was too embarrassed to ask for anything else. Mrs. Liu still wanted to say something, but Gu Chungyes' gaze stopped her. He knew well that although his father had rejected his third brother and his wife, Father Gu no longer had hostility toward them. If Mrs. Liu continued this, she would only cause trouble. The other family, who had been listening to the commotion outside, was disappointed when they heard the final verdict. Especially Mrs. Yao. She had wanted her brother-in-law to go over and avenge them, or at least pester the pair of jinxes. Unfortunately, it ended with nothing. After that, she sighed and said to second Uncle Gu, "Big brother seems to be soft-hearted toward Chungrui now." Second Uncle Gu didn't reply. After all, they couldn't treat the young couple the same way they did in the past since they had saved their lives. Besides, they hadn't done anything unforgivable. "Darling, are we really going to open a shop in town?" Second Anne asked again. "There's nothing bad about it. After all, we still haven't bought a boat. Also, one of our family members will be giving birth soon in the new year, and there will be many places where we will need money. We can't always rely on this little bit of money, right?" But Mrs. Yao wanted to speak but stopped. Ultimately, she thought of her brother-in-law's reply and swallowed the words at the tip of her tongue. Since they were all working, why not do something in which she could make the decisions? At least the money would be in her hands if they fought over it. If it was someone else, with someone else between them, who knew if the other party would try to hide their profits? The next day, after Mrs. Liu and Mrs. Yao knew they could not borrow money from others, they went to the town to rent a shop. Gu Chungrui waited for 2 days and was relieved when he did not see his father. In the blink of an eye, another 5 days had passed. The young couple's new restaurant in town had been renovated, and they went to check it out. The decorations were straightforward. They just removed the older decorations inside, brushed the main hall with white paint, and painted a group of cattle and sheep leisurely on pasture on the walls. The second floor was even more straightforward. After the white paint was applied, pictures of their signature dishes were pasted on the wall. This was an oil-painted draft printed by Gu Chungrui. Although it was not as clear as conventional photography, the colors were bright, and they could still make customers drool. Then, he had several paintings with plums, orchids, chrysanthemums, and bamboo. There were even lovely paintings of tools, chess, books, and others. Finally, there was the kitchen. The pots and pans were all replaced with white stones that were easy to clean, making them look clean and tidy. Chapter 134, Buying Labor 1. What do the two bosses think? Are you satisfied? Zhang Daniu asked after they were done with the tour. Not bad. Who did you find to paint this? It's not half bad. Gu Chungrui asked. I discovered an academy scholar who is also a nephew in our clan. Because his family is poor, he will come out to do some work, such as writing letters, calligraphy, painting, and so on. This time, 2 big and 4 small paintings cost 10 taels of silver. That's reasonable, and it's worth the price. Help me pass on a message. Ask him to come over when he's free. I want him to draw something else. Sure. I'll thank you for your appreciation on his behalf. It's a total of 30 silver coins this time, right? Yes, only the stone slab and the painting are worth some money. Honestly, I've never seen this style of renovation before, but the way it turned out isn't bad. I think I will have to change my style more and can't just stick to the old way. Simplistic is elegant, easy, and true. Haha, you educated people sure have lively brains. Zhang Daniu was stunned for a moment before laughing out loud. After settling the bill, Zhang Daniu brought his men and left. Gu Chungrui turned his head. Babe, take a look and see if anything else needs to be changed. If there's nothing else, I'll get someone to move the tables and chairs that have been changed. No need. When you're on your way, ask if the bowls and plates have arrived. Also, it'll be 3 days before the pot and the signboard are ready. We have to find a fixed palace to provide us with smokeless coal. Gu Chungrui smacked his forehead. I forgot to tell you that I got to know a charcoal maker through Dr. Luo. I've already ordered 2,000 pounds, and it'll be here in 2 days. Then we're just short of workers. The backyard has been cleaned, so let's get some workers now. All right, we'll head over after we're done here. After Gu Chungrui finished speaking, he turned around and walked out. Then, he went to the labor market and found a few people to help clean up. He also informed the porcelain shop and didn't expect all kinds of tableware to be delivered in less than 15 minutes. After Zhouing checked them one by one, she made sure there were no defects and paid the bill. She was surprised that these porcelain pieces cost nearly 100 taels of silver. There was quite a difference in price between fine and coarse porcelain. After arranging everything in the restaurant, Zhouing put all the plates and bowls into her inner space, washed them with the dishwasher, disinfected them, and then put them on the bowl rack. After that, the young couple found a labor dealer with manager Liu's recommendation. Zhouing was shocked when she saw a ghost-like woman sitting in the room, but she quickly restrained her emotions and asked, "Are you Granny Ma?" "You're." The woman raised her head and sized them up. Seeing that they were dressed in ordinary clothes, she couldn't figure out their purpose for a moment. She frowned and hesitated to speak. "We were introduced by Uncle Liu from Hongyan Restaurant. We want to buy a few servants with till-death contracts." Zhouing said, "So you're here from old Liu's recommendation. Please have a seat." When the woman heard this, her attitude immediately changed, and she greeted them with a smile. Zhouing saw that she was about to pour them tea and stopped her. "Granny Ma, don't worry about it. We're not thirsty, so let's see who you have first." "No problem. What kind of people do you want to buy? Or rather, what kind of people do you want to use?" Granny Ma immediately put down her cup and walked over. "We want to open a restaurant, so we're looking for someone who can cook. It doesn't matter if they're male or female. Also, if there are young men available, we will buy 2 of them." Granny Ma chuckled when she heard that. "What a coincidence. I have had a group of new people here recently. I'll call them all over, and you can choose whoever you want." After that, she slowly hobbled to the backyard. Chapter 135, Buying Labor, 2. If it weren't for Uncle Liu's introduction, I would have thought we were at the wrong place. Gu Chungrui smiled and shook his head. Zhouing rolled her eyes at him and said, "You know it very well, don't you?" Television media left such a deep impression. After all, Gu Chungrui quickly raised his hands and said. After hearing what she said, she also thought of the pimps in most TV dramas who tried to solicit customers, especially the women who stood on the street in war movies. Soon, Granny Ma led a group of people in. There were men and women, young and old, and even babies. It seemed that Granny Ma was a good person. Otherwise, she wouldn't have kept the baby. Then, she realized something unusual. How could a labor dealer sell babies? Thus, she asked, "Granny Ma, what's the deal with them? Why are they bringing a baby with them?" "Don't mention it. One of them was pregnant 2 months ago, but I have to take them in no matter what. They are officially enslaved people." "Official slaves?" "Yes, from the south. The document said they were illegal salt traders in their clan, and I don't know any more details." When Zhouing heard this, she immediately remembered the Gu family's incident, and they seemed to have suffered the same fate of being exiled. Now that she thought about it, it was lucky that the Gu family was only raided and exiled. If they were made into officially enslaved people, they would never be able to see the light of day again. At the same time, Gu Chungrui also realized that and suddenly felt a wave of fear. The Ming dynasty's official slaves were servants used by the officers' families and were people who were lower than the general till-death contract servants. They were the same as slaves, animals, and people who were unimportant even if they died. The main takeaway was that they would be slaves for generations without any freedom other than an official special pardon. "Are they all official slaves?" Zhouing asked after calming down. "No, only this family of 3. The rest are not." "That's good." Zhouing stood up and glanced at the crowd. "Regardless of whether you're a man or a woman, those who can cook, step forward. The cooking I'm talking about is not just cooking normally. You must at least have some unique skills." As soon as she finished speaking, only 2 women and a man stood out from the group. Is there no one else? Zhouing asked again. Then, another man stood out from the crowd but was hesitant, and it was apparent that he was in a dilemma. What's wrong? Zhouing pointed at him and asked, Do you know how to cook or not? Yes, I was a chef before, but you are hesitating about our employment, right? Tell me, where did you work as a chef? Gu Chengrue said. I was a chef in a prominent family in the capital before, but I was sold because I offended someone. We want to open a restaurant. Do you want to do it or not? Open a restaurant? The man's eyes immediately lit up. He didn't want to be a servant to a prominent family anymore. It would be fine if it were a harmonious family, but if it were a family with many disputes, he would have to live in fear every day for fear of being used by others. However, he feared his skills would be wasted if it was an average family. It would be best if he could enter a restaurant. Sure, but I'll have to bring my wife and children along. After that, he pulled out a woman and a 7- or 8-year-old boy from the crowd. All right, stand to the side first. Zhouing glanced at the two of them and nodded after ensuring they were clean and tidy. With 2 men and 2 women, she didn't want to hire any more chefs. She went up and picked 3 neatly dressed young men and said, Granny Ma, just these few. Old Lu introduced you, so I won't waste my time haggling. The 3 women are worth 10 taels each. The 5 strong laborers are worth 12 taels each, and the child is worth 5 taels. At this point, Granny Ma counted with her fingers and concluded, 95 taels in total. Chapter 135 Signature Dish 1. Granny Ma, are you trying to do a one-time deal? If I remember correctly, a woman would only sell for 8 taels of silver at most, and only a young and beautiful virgin could be sold for 10 taels. Zhouing said with a faint smile. The original her grew up with a group of servants. She couldn't guarantee anything else, but she was very clear about the price of buying labor. Well, you know, they are all people with skills, so, Granny Ma said with a smile. No matter how skilled they are, their age and physical condition are obvious. For Uncle Liu's sake, I want haggle further. How about 90 taels? Granny Ma hesitated for a moment before nodding. All right, then 90 taels it is. If you need more in the future, you have to come to me. All right. After Zhouing agreed, she immediately gave her 9 silver ingots. Granny Ma took them and weighed them in her hands. Then, she turned around and took out their indenture contracts. If you need anything in the future, just let me know so I can prepare for you in advance. I will, Zhouing promised, and she took a group of people out of the labor dealer. First, she took them to a clothing shop and bought them 2 sets of ordinary clothes. At the same time, she bought a mattress for each of them, including the couple. After they came out, Zhouing gave their contracts to Gu Chengrue and said, Rue, go to the officers to register them under us. Okay, I'll go to the restaurant to find you. Gu Chengrue answered and left with the contracts. As for Zhouing, she took a group of people back to the restaurant and said, other than the main house, you can choose your room anywhere else in this courtyard. I'll give you 15 minutes to make your choice and gather back here. Yes, madam. The few of them immediately started discussing where they should stay. Zhouing saw they were harmonious, so she didn't care about them anymore. Instead, she turned around and went to the kitchen. Since they were going to live here, she should prepare some food. They didn't have much firewood left, but the remaining wood from the renovation should be more than enough to burn for 3 to 5 days. There was no food or vegetables. She took out 50 pounds of black flour, 50 pounds of crushed rice, 10 pounds of millet, a bag of sorghum, and a bag of beans from her inner space. Also, there were cabbage, carrots, and some dried vegetables. She didn't have pots here yet, so she took out a set of 5 pots of different sizes from her inner space that she had stolen from the Chow family's house. As for spices, she didn't take out any. Instead, she planned to give them some silver and let them buy it themselves. It could also be considered a test of their cooking skills. Then, she walked out and waited in the courtyard. After a while, the group of people came out of their living quarters and stood in a line, waiting for her orders. When Zhouing saw this, she knew these people were probably trained and must have worked for a prominent family before. All of you, tell me your names and what you are good at, she asked directly. The hesitating chef was the first to speak. My name is Li Shang, and am good at cooking. Stir-fried meat is my specialty. This is my wife. Zhouing interrupted him. Let her say it herself. She's here to work in a restaurant, so even if she lacks skills, she needs to be able to speak and talk to people. When a customer asks her something, she will have to answer the question clearly. When Zhouing said this, she looked at the woman and said, "Will that be a problem?" No, no. I used to work in a sewing room and am good at cutting clothes. As for my name, it's a name that my master gave me in the past. Please give me a new name. The woman answered as she bowed. Mistress, please give us a name. The others echoed. Even the little boy chimed in with the others. Chapter 137 Signature Dish 2, however. Zhouing was not good at giving names, so she had to ask, "Don't you have names? If you have original names, can you keep them? My name is Fongqing. I know some martial arts and was previously the coachman in my previous residence." At that moment, the strongest-looking young man spoke. "I am Zhaocheng. Previously, I was in charge of my elderly master's food. I am good at making soup, especially herbal-type dishes." A male chef stood out and said, "Then why did you leave the residence?" Zhouing asked curiously. Those who had served their elderly master usually had the benefit of seniority in their residence. Even if the elderly master didn't put them in an important position, he wouldn't sell them out. The man was stunned and replied, "Do you still remember the official slaves back there? I was in the same batch, sold after my previous master's family was in trouble." Zhouing nodded and looked at the others, but they didn't speak up. After pondering for a moment, she pointed to the two young men and said, "Then you will follow your new master's surname. The older one will be called Gu Wan, and the younger one will be called Gu Wu. As for the little boy, you will follow your father's surname, Li, and I will give you a first name, Yu. I hope you'll be happy with this." "Thank you for the name, madam," the three of them said at the same time. Gu Wan then introduced himself. "I'm Gu Wan, and I've learned how to write from a steward in a manner for a few years. As for what I'm good at, it's probably running fast. I'm Gu Wu, a slave. I was born into a peasant family. If I have to say something I'm good at, it would be being diligent." Zhouing nodded. Gu Wan looked younger than Gu Wu, but she could tell that Gu Wan was smarter than Gu Wu. Then, she looked at the three women with a troubled expression and said, "Mrs. Li, they'll just call you Mrs. Li and use your old name. As for the two of you, the older one will be called Chun Yang, and the younger one will be called Xion Yang. I'm Chun Yang. I'm good at making desserts and best at making silver silk rolls. I, Xion Yang, have opened a shop before. I'm best at making dumplings, rolling noodles, and stir-frying vegetables." Chun Yang was fair and clean, while Xion Yang was dark and thin. After remembering their characteristics, she nodded and said, "Is there anything else anyone wants to add? If you do, say it as soon as possible. Otherwise, don't blame me for not giving you face when things get out of hand in the future." Everyone looked at each other for a moment, but no one spoke again. "Let's confirm again. Is there really no one?" Everyone shook their heads. "Very good. In that case, I hope that everyone will work hard together in the future and run the restaurant well together. Whoever performs outstandingly, I can return your freedom to you in 10 years. Of course, if you perform well and don't want to leave, I can take care of you in your old age. Is there anything else you want to add?" Zhouing asked after she finished. "Will Mistress really give us our freedom?" Li Sheng asked nervously. Mrs. Li also looked at her expectantly after hearing that. Although they didn't have much hope, their son was still young, and they had hoped for him to lead a normal life. "I'm a person of my word, and I'll naturally fulfill my promise to you. Everyone can be a witness to each other." Zhouing raised her hand and said, "Thank you, mistress." When Li Sheng heard this, he and his son, Li Yu, knelt with a plop. "All right, it's getting late, and it would be best if you guys cleaned up. I prepared some grains and vegetables in the kitchen in advance. Tomorrow, everyone will show off your skills, and I will start to assign tasks according to your skills. Of course, I will also point out your shortcomings. May I ask what kind of special restaurant mistress wants to open?" Zhaoqing asked curiously. "We'll have hot pot and barbecue as the main dishes, with some minor side dishes. So, you must bring out your unique skills tomorrow so that I can set the menu." After Zhouing finished speaking, she gave Zhaoqing 5 taels of silver and said, "If you lack anything, You can prepare it yourself and just record the bill. Chapter 138, Liu's Dessert. Thank you for your trust, mistress. We will do our best. Zhaoqing bent over and picked the silver ingots up with both hands. You guys go ahead. We won't stay here tonight, so you guys close the doors and windows. Zhou waved her hand. After that, she went to the blacksmith shop to ensure the work could be completed on time. Then, she returned to the restaurant and happened to meet Gu Chungrui on the way. After Zhou took the indenture contracts from him, the two discussed something and then separated ways again. Afterward, Gu Chungrui went directly to the new clinic, while Zhou returned to the village. When she passed the grocery store, she remembered that there was no more salt brine at home, so she went in and bought a pound. After she came out, she heard Gu Chinx's familiar voice near her. She listened to his voice, shouting and selling his goods. She walked over curiously and didn't expect to see Mrs. Liu and Mrs. Yao selling desserts while Gu Chengxi invited customers to the entrance. She raised her head and looked at the shop's signboard. Liu's Desserts. She stood and found that they were still selling high-end desserts, such as jujube paste shortbread and pine nut lily pastry. But business wasn't good, as not many people bought them. She shook her head, turned around, and walked back. Few people would be willing to buy such high-end snacks in this small town and in such a small shop. On the way, she collected 2 sets of fresh pig offal. After returning home, she began to sift through some soybeans. But this time she only sifted enough for Hongyun restaurant. As for dried yuba, since the recipe had been given out, it was time to stop making it. Thinking of this, she took 100 copper and went next door. When she saw Sister Tian making clothes in the courtyard, she greeted her. Sister Tian, you are busy today? Oh, you are here. Come in and have a seat. Sister Tian invited her in as she rolled up the cloth and placed it into a bamboo basket. Oh, there's no need. You can continue your work as it's just a matter of a few words. After Zhou said that, she handed her the string of copper coins. This is for Dehua's salary. I've sold the yub-making process, and Dehua doesn't have to come to make more. Why did you sell it? I heard that yuba is selling nicely and quickly. Did someone bully you? No. I promised to help someone run a restaurant, so I don't have time to do it. I see. It's good to have a fixed job. Sister Tian paused for a moment at this point before continuing. Dehua hasn't worked for a month yet. I can't accept this money. Sister Tian, just take it. She's quite capable, and we don't want to dampen her enthusiasm. We might need her help in the future. Zhou said hurriedly. By the way, when Brother Tian comes back tonight, can you tell him to come over? We have something to talk to him about. Sure, they'll tell him when the time comes. Then he'll go back now. Don't you want to stay and have a chat? Thank you, but he'll come again when I'm free. After Zhou finished speaking, she turned around and went home. In the evening, Qianzhuang and Gu Erjiang returned with the ox cart, but they didn't come back with many soybeans. After unloading the cart, Qianzhuang said, Mrs. Gu, we've come to an end. We really are unable to collect any more soybeans in this area. It's not worth it with another increment of 1 copper per pound, and you guys might as well buy it from the shop. There's still work to do, but you won't be collecting soybeans. You will collect carrots, cabbages, and winter melons from tomorrow onwards. Also, if you encounter a carrot with a red heart, you must buy them. You'll transport it directly to the original Dongxin restaurant when the time comes. We'll get someone to settle the bill for you. Remember, the vegetables you collect must be fresh. Don't take the frozen ones. If I'm satisfied with your performance, this job will be permanently yours in the future. You guys are going to open a restaurant? Did you strike gold? Qianzhuang asked in astonishment. Gu Erjiang was also so shocked that his jaw almost fell to the ground. Chapter 139, Recruiting. No, we didn't strike gold. Don't I have good cooking skills? Someone took a fancy to my skills and wanted to hire me to be a restaurant manager. I thought I could earn more there and wouldn't be as tired, so I agreed to their offer. Zhou replied with a smile. That's still a good thing. Such a big restaurant manager would earn at least 5 taels of silver a month. Gu Erjiang said with an envious look. Right. In the future, us brothers will follow you two around. You can't just leave us alone. Zhuang nodded in agreement. Recently, because they had been going out to collect soybeans every day, the villagers noticed they had started to work seriously and had begun to give off a better impression. There were even people who had started to matchmake them. Although they were all widows or women with issues, it was a good start. If they could continue to work steadily, it wouldn't be impossible for them to marry a wife they liked. They'll repeat the same thing. As long as you do your best, we'll definitely continue to hire you. All right, we can rest assured with your words. We'll start collecting vegetables from tomorrow onwards. Remember to send them to the original Dongxing restaurant. It doesn't have a new signboard yet. All right, we'll be leaving then. Do you guys still have enough money on you? Yes, it's enough to last 2 more days. Zhuang said his goodbyes and walked out with Gu Erjiang. After they left, Zhouing put the 20 pounds of soybeans into her interspace and went into the kitchen to start cooking. After Gu Chungrui returned, the two had just placed food on the table when Tian Zhaoang came over. When he saw them eating, he paused for a moment before turning to leave. Gu Chungrui quickly called out to him, "Brother Tian, since you're here, let's eat together. We can have a drink together too." Yes. You boys eat first while I go to the kitchen to finish cooking." Zhouing told them as she turned around and returned to the kitchen. Tonight's dishes were pretty delicious. There was a plate of twice-fried pork, a plate of tofu with cabbage, a plate of cold mixed shredded tofu salad, and millet porridge with black steamed buns. After that, she fried a plate of salted peanuts and another plate of scrambled eggs with scallions. After returning, although the 3 of them were sitting at the same table, Zhouing did not participate in the drinking. She quickly finished eating and retreated to the side. After 3 glasses of alcohol, Tianzhong looked at Zhouing and said, "Sister-in-law, my sister said you were looking for me. Is there something you need?" "There's something, but it's better if Chungrui tells you," said Zhouing. Gu Chungrui told him why they were stopping their current business, then said, "So, I'm afraid that I can't supply you with more goods when we are busy. However, the restaurant is still short of staff. I wonder if you would like to come over? But I don't know how to help out in a restaurant." "What do you mean?" "It's relatively easier to learn to make skewers. If you are willing to come over, you will be in charge of making skewers." Yes, the meat for skewers is marinated beforehand, and the ingredients are also prepared in advance. You just have to control the heat well. Zhouing agreed. "Can I really give it a try?" "Sure. If you can stay, you'll get 1 silver a month. Will you still be able to supply for tomorrow?" "I have a few regular customers, so I must inform them tomorrow." "All right, we will supply you 1 more day." "Okay, thank you for your hard work. It's a matter of mutual benefit." After Zhouing finished speaking, she went to the kitchen to make some braised intestines and dried tofu. Tian Zhaoang finished his meal and went home to tell his sister about the matter. He said, "Big sister, you should grow fewer bean sprouts from now on, as there's only a limited amount of time I have to send them out to a few regular customers." This is great news. Not only will your income stabilize, but you also don't need to be exposed to the elements while working. You don't have to worry about the bean sprouts. I can deliver them. Big sister Tian said happily. "Maybe it's better if I go." "I can. Don't worry. I can do it. You have to work hard when you go there. This way, you might be able to land a wife in half a year." "All right, if it's too hard to go over for the delivery, you better not force yourself." "I know." Chapter 133. Years the next day, after Tian Zhaoang collected the goods, Zhouing and her husband went to town with him. After they parted ways in town, the couple went to their restaurant. Gu Chungrui got to know everyone and then went to his clinic. Zhouing stayed behind and began to check everyone's dishes. When she arrived at the kitchen, she looked at the ingredients they had bought. The meat was fresh, and one could tell it was good quality meat. The seasonings were all prepared, and she also found some medicinal herbs she had never thought of, such as rhizome and chuanqiao. These were great tonic herbs. "Zhao Cheng, did you buy the herbs?" she asked. "Yes, I want to make a nourishing herbal soup today. I will use chicken, duck, cuttlefish, goose, pig's belly, pork ribs, and other tonic herbs. This soup is suitable for the elderly, pregnant women, and those with weak bodies." Zhao Cheng added, "It will probably take a lot of effort, so go ahead and start." After Zhouing finished speaking, She looked at the crowd and said, "Start when your ingredients are ready. Make everything yourselves as I want to test your skills." "Yes, mistress," everyone responded and turned around, each finding their own ingredients and busying themselves. Mrs. Lee, on the other hand, helped to start the fire. As for the three young men, she sent them out to find a store selling large quantities of chili. This was the most important matter in their restaurant's opening, and it had to be settled as soon as possible. After that, Zhouing walked over to Liu, sitting on a small bench in the courtyard and practicing writing on the ground. She said, "Little fellow, you can read?" "Yes, mistress. I can read, but not much. My father and mother taught me what I know." Liu quickly stood up and bowed. "There's no need to be so polite. Just sit down." Zhouing pulled him to sit down, and she looked down at the words he was practicing. They were all simple surnames of people. For example, Zhou Wang, He, Hua, Sure. "Do your father and mother know many words?" she asked. "I'm not sure, but my father can write down all the commonly used names. My mother, on the other hand, is a little lacking." "Do you like to read?" "I like it. When I was in a residence, I envied Brother Dongzi, who was a study attendant. He learned many words from the young master." "Is that so? How about I send you to school? They'll give you 3 years, and if you can get a recommendation letter from the headmaster after 3 years, they'll give you freedom and let you continue your studies." "Really?" Liu was overjoyed, but he shook his head. "No, I'm a servant. I have to work." "How much work can you do?" "At most, you will be keeping the fire from burning out. How about this? When you come home, you can help with the work while studying, and I won't give you a monthly salary. How about it?" Liu was both surprised and delighted, not knowing what to say for a moment. Then he'll discuss it with my father," he mumbled. After hearing her suggestion, he got up and ran into the kitchen. Liu excitedly told Li Sheng about Zhou Ying's offer. After Li Sheng heard this, he was so shocked that he almost cut his finger off. When he saw Zhou Ying, who followed Liu in with a smile, he asked in disbelief, "Mistress, is what he said true?" "Of course, he's still young and can't do much. It's better to let him study for 3 years, and if the headmaster can recommend him to take the scholar's exam, they'll let him take it. If he doesn't get that recommendation, he'll be able to return to the restaurant to help with his writing and reading skills. But, of course, his monthly salary will be gone while he studies." Of course. "Thank you, mistress. Thank you so much. You've given him a way out." Li Sheng nodded repeatedly. At the same time, he bent his waist lower and lower, almost kneeling down. His wife, Mrs. Li, pulled Liu down to their knees and said, "Thank you for your kindness, mistress." Chapter 141 Taste Testing. "Mrs. Li, please get up. As I've said before, anything is possible as long as you guys do your best," Zhouing said as she helped her up. "Mistress, you are too benevolent. This servant will definitely do a good job." Chun Yang immediately replied. She wasn't young anymore, and she wasn't a free person. The possibility of getting married was almost zero, so it was better to show her loyalty early so that she could have a place to retire. Yes, we will definitely do a good job," everyone immediately echoed. At the same time, their faces were filled with joy and hope. "I believe that, so hurry up and get back to work. I'm still waiting to enjoy a delicious meal." Zhouing reassured them, took Liu back to the courtyard, and taught him a classic poem. She didn't expect the boy's brain to be this smart, being able to remember and recite it to her after being taught 3 times. However, she only taught him a little. After teaching him 5 sentences of the poem, she let him go to the side to play. She turned around and tidied up the main house. Although they did not intend to live in town, if something happened, or it rained, or especially if there were a heavy snowstorm Mrs. Bai once mentioned, the couple would have to have a place to stay. By the time she was almost done with her work, the servant's signature dish was nearly done. First, it was Li Sheng's stir-fried meat. Red and green vegetables were bright yet distinct from each other amongst the meat sauce, as well as the thickness of the meat slices was just right. If it weren't for the fact that the green chili had wilted and lacked some sparkle to it, the appearance of this dish would definitely have been full marks. She picked up a pair of chopsticks, picked up a piece of meat, and put it into her mouth. The meat was tender, smooth, and with a hint of spiciness. It was refreshing, and it was indeed a good dish. Then, she gave him the recipe for twice stir-fried pork and said, "Try to make this dish." "All right, they'll do it now." Li Shang had a look of joy on his face as he turned around and started making it. Next was Qionyang's dumplings. It was fresh, fragrant, and chewy, stuffed with pork and scallions. It was delicious, and it seemed Zhouing could hand over making the restaurant's meatballs to her. After eating, she judged. The dumpling filling is well mixed, but the wrap is a little too thick. If you want to make dumplings in the future, you can use light salt water to mix with the flour or add an egg inside to increase the toughness of the flour. "Thank you for your guidance, mistress. I will remember it." Qionyang replied thoughtfully. Next was Chunyang's silver silk vegetable rolls. The rolls were yellow, probably roasted, and looked beautiful. After tasting one, she commented, "It's sweet and delicious, with a hint of milk. Did you put milk in it?" "No, it's cream. Isn't it?" Mistress sure has sensitive taste buds. "I did put in some cream," Chunyang affirmed. "Yup, in the future, make it smaller, the kind that can be eaten in 2 bites. Also, research 5 types of desserts and make a dessert platter. Oh right, there are also all kinds of bean and chestnut cakes. You can make them into a plate or 2. Zhouing suggested and gave her the recipe for scallion pancakes and left the rest to her. When Zhao Cheng's soup was served, it was already noon. Gu Chengrui had just returned, so everyone took half a bowl and tried it. After Gu Chengrui finished drinking, he nodded and said, "Babe, this soup is amazing. It's refreshing, fragrant, and without any medicinal smell. It's very delicious. If you like it, we can have one from time to time in the future. Then it'll be waiting." After the meal, Zhouing went to Hongyun restaurant and bought a bag of lamb bones from Manager Liu. However, Manager Liu didn't want the money, so Zhouing said, "Uncle Liu, I'm thinking of buying all the lamb bones here in the future. You can't keep giving them to me for free. However, leave a little more meat on the top. These bones are stripped too clean." Chapter 142 Recruitment. You're not considering selling bones in such a big restaurant, are you? That's not going to attract high-end customers. Manager Liu said, shaking his head. "I'm not in the business of bones, but of beef and mutton. But I'm worried there won't be enough sheep for sale in my village, so I can only take some from you." "I see. That's great. They'll come and see what kind of restaurant you are opening soon." "Of course, you're welcome. The 28th is a good day, 3 days later. You must come and support us when it opens." "Don't worry. I will. Then I will leave the bones for you from the day after tomorrow." "Deal." The mutton is 25 coppers per pound and 10 coppers for the bones. What do you think? "No need, just 5 coppers will do. If you don't want it, we usually clean it and feed it to the dogs." "Then you better not regret it when my business is doing well," laughed Zhouing. "Don't worry, I won't regret it." "All right, thank you, Uncle Liu. By the way, why don't you go over there for dinner tonight? You can also try the taste of the lamb bones." "No, they'll wait until your opening. I have an important guest coming over tonight." "All right, they'll be going back then." After Zhouing finished speaking, she turned around and returned to her own restaurant. Then, she gave Zhaocheng the recipe for making the lamb spine hot pot. From now on, they'll leave the lamb spine hot pot and lamb bone soup to you. As for the herbal cuisine, we'll decide the menu and make it after we've decided." "Understood. We'll go and prepare now." "All right. We'll be eating lamb spine hot pot tonight then." Zhouing returned to the main house and saw Gu Chengrui reading a book. She paused and asked, "Aren't you supposed to be busy over there?" "Not really. The main thing happening over there is the renovation, so there's no need to keep a close eye on it." Gu Chengrui pulled her into his arms and kissed her on the cheek. "It's been hard on you. Why don't we hire another manager to help support the front, and you can command from behind? Besides, there are some things that need to be done by you personally, and you might not be able to handle them." "Sure, but finding a suitable manager is not easy. If we put up a notice, those interested will keep an eye on it. At that time, we'll just ask around about his character." "Oh right, there are also the waiters, as 3 is not enough. We need at least 6, or else we won't be able to handle it." "All right, You should write a notice and we'll put it up later. Zhouing decided and took out the stationaries from her interspace. Gu Qingrui immediately got up and started to prepare. At that time, Zhouing added, by the way, we also need to add people in the kitchen. Find 2 to do odd jobs and 2 to wash the dishes. All right, there's quite a number of people we still need. Gu Qingrui sighed. Then, he bent over and started writing the notice. While he was doing that, Zhouing designed the waistcoat and outfit for the restaurant staff. It could unify their clothing and keep them sanitary, especially with a cooking hat. It would be troublesome if any hair fell into the pot. People came to the door in the afternoon, not long after the notice was put up. The additional kitchen helper and dishwasher positions were quickly taken by 4 strong women. As for the waiters, Zhouing had picked those who were literate. Otherwise, they wouldn't even know how to write down customer orders. They didn't expect to recruit 4 at a time, and 2 were originally this Dongxing restaurant's employees. Zhouing hesitated for a moment before accepting them, but she still warned, this isn't the original Dongxing restaurant, and we're not doing what we did before. If you want to work here, then do it well. Otherwise, please don't blame me for firing you when the time comes. Don't worry, boss. We understand this, and we will definitely do our best. Okay, you only have one chance. Cherish it. Chapter 143 Sun Hongliang. While preparing the lamb spine hot pot in the evening, Qian Zhuang and Gu Erjiang arrived. Zhouing introduced them to everyone and told them to sit down and have dinner. After the meal, the 4 climbed into the donkey cart and left home together. Gu Erjiang smacked his lips in satisfaction as the wind blew, saying, "Sister-in-law, how did you think of cooking with lamb bones? It's delicious, and I'm sure stuffed. Winter is the season to eat mutton, but sheep don't have much meat to begin with. It would be a pity to throw away all the bones, so we had to think of a way to eat them." Zhouing was flattered. That's true. Sheep aren't pigs, and you really can't get much meat from one. Gu Erjiang nodded in agreement. Hee, since it's trying out the dishes over these 2 days, can we go over? You don't have to pay us our daily salary. Qian Zhuang asked. Sure, but you can't just eat but give more suggestions. Zhouing paused for a moment and added, by the way, when you collect the vegetables, remember to collect some fungus, such as shiitake mushrooms, tea tree mushrooms, and other mountain products. Also, buy as many white sesame seeds as you can. All right, leave this to us. You can also buy winter bamboo shoots. Gu Qingrui echoed. Understood. Qian Zhuang nodded. In the evening, Tian Zhaowang replied that he could start work the next day. Therefore, the next day, the 3 went to their manor and took a sheep to the restaurant. Over the next 2 days, Zhouing stayed in the restaurant during the day to guide them in serving new dishes and establishing the menu. At the same time, she gave a few simple training to the waiters and assigned them to wear red clothes and hats. Of course, the kitchen staff also had their uniforms, but they were all changed to white. In the meantime, the copper pot, skewers, and charcoal were delivered one after another. After Zhouing taught everyone how to use them, she focused on teaching Tian Zhaowang how to make skewers and barbecue them. It was just that they had yet to find a suitable manager for the restaurant. Just as Zhou Ying was about to do it herself, Manager Lu came in with a man in his 20s and said, Mrs. Zhou, have you found a suitable manager? Not yet. Do you have someone suitable to recommend? Zhou Ying glanced at the man behind Manager Lu. At the same time, she was also a little surprised, as she didn't expect such a young man to have frostbite scars all over his face. Smart, this is my nephew, Sun Hongliang. He used to be the assistant manager of another restaurant in the north. Now that there's a natural disaster happening, he came to me, but I don't know if you'll want him. There's a disaster in the north? What disaster? Zhou Ying asked in surprise. Snowstorm, giving snow that's 1 meter deep. Sigh. There was just a drought half a year ago. Who expected that it would suddenly snow this heavily? Wouldn't this kill the people in the north? The weather is abnormal, huh? Zhou Ying commented and looked at Sun Hongliang. Mr. Sun, how's your accounting? This is the account book I made before. Please have a look. Sun Hongliang took a book from his clothes and handed it to her. Zhou Ying opened it and took a look. The daily income of the restaurant, all spending, and the overall amount were clearly stated. All right, the manager here is mainly in charge of accounting and greeting guests. There shouldn't be any problems with these two, right? No, I've done all these before. That's good. Your monthly salary is 5 taels of silver. Come over early tomorrow. Zhouing paused and added, about the cold sores on your face. No worries about that. I will get it treated as soon as possible. Remember to change into new clothes tomorrow and come over early in the morning to prepare for the opening. Zhouing reminded and looked at Manager Liu. Uncle Liu, I have to let him stay for a while to familiarize himself with the dishes in the restaurant. Chapter 144 Grassland Taste. It's what he should do. You guys go ahead. After Manager Liu finished, he looked at Sun Hongliang and said, since Mrs. Zhou gave you a chance, you must do your best. Don't worry, uncle. I will do my best. Sun Hongliang bowed. After the two of them sent off Manager Liu, Zhouing took Sun Hongliang to the kitchen and introduced him to the main dishes in the restaurant. Finally, she said, bring a menu home later and note the main points. Also, there will be a 30% discount event tomorrow. We'll only charge 70% of the total price, which is one of our publicity highlights. You must remember it well. In addition, we have a membership point system. If anyone spends 10 taels of silver tomorrow, you will issue them a membership card until you have issued all 100 cards. After that, tell them they could get a 10% discount with the card. Of course, the points would not be recorded after the discount. The customer can get back 10 silver taels for every 100 silver taels spent. That means there are 2 different ways to discount, which is a good way to attract customers. Sun Hongliang commented. Yes, there are only 100 membership cards. They'll bring them back tomorrow. Understood. Oh right. Where's your hometown? How far is it from here? It's almost near the Northern Territory, about 1,200 miles from here. But don't worry, several counties are between us, so the refugees rarely reach here. I only came here because I have relatives here. When do you plan to go back? Sun Hongliang shook his head. Our house has already collapsed. If I can continue to make a living here, I will stay. That's good. You don't have to be so polite to me. It sounds awkward. Just talk to me casually in the future. All right, I understand. Okay, dress up tomorrow and come early. Zhouing then handed him a menu. See you tomorrow. Sun Hongliang bowed and turned to leave. After returning home that night, Gu Chungrui went to the village to inform the guests he was planning to invite. After dinner, the two entered the inner space. Zhouing printed 100 cards on special printing paper used for business cards. The front of the membership card was printed with the traditional characters of Grassland Taste membership card in gold. There was also a picture of a grassland shepherd in the background. The back was empty, and she planned to use a quill to add the members' information. This way, it would play an anti-forgery role to a certain extent. Finally, she used the same paper to print 100 copies of the menu. You shouldn't do this as this paper isn't waterproof, and it'll be destroyed if the customers aren't careful. Gu Chungrui walked over and reminded her. Then what do you think we should do? We can't possibly laminate it, right? There will be problems if others see it. Zhouing turned her head and asked. I remember we received a batch of transparent waterproof paint before, the kind used to paint furniture, so we can try that. If someone asks, just say that you use tree oil, and no one will look into it. Then let's try that. Zhouing agreed and went to a warehouse to find the paint. After mixing the ingredients according to the ratio instructed, she found a brush and lathered it on a membership card. She didn't expect the effect to be so good, as even the handwriting wasn't affected. Then, she painted all the membership cards, dried them, and swiped the other side. She gathered them all after they dried. The next morning, because they no longer had to make tofu, the two carried the hot pot base ingredient Zhouing had prepared beforehand and went out in new clothes. After they reached the restaurant, Sun Hongliang and the rest were already prepared. They hung a red silk cloth on the signboard and went up and greeted them politely. They didn't stay long at the entrance and handed over the restaurant's opening to Sun Hongliang. In the backyard, Zhouing walked to Fang Qing, who was cutting meat, and asked, Fang Qing, have you done what I asked you to do yesterday? Chapter 145 Opening 1. Yes, mistress, it's all done. They should be here soon. Just as Fong Qing finished speaking, someone knocked on the back door. He immediately went to open the door and saw a few young beggars walking in. The group leader asked, "Brother Fong, we're here. Do you mean what you said?" "Of course, 2 pounds of polished rice per person," Fong Qing affirmed and looked at Zhou Ying. "Our boss is here. If you don't believe me, you can ask her." "That's right. We agreed on 2 pounds per person. Why don't we give it to you now?" Zhou Ying said, "No need, but can you change it to black noodles? That way, we can eat for a longer time." "No problem. 3 pounds of black noodles each, and he'll give you 1 pound of lard as a gift." "Then it's settled." The leader immediately agreed, then turned around and pulled Fong Qing to ask for the brochure, as if he feared she would return on her words. Zhou Ying smiled and didn't speak. Instead, she picked up the sliced lard and went to the kitchen to stir-fry the hot pot base ingredients. The locals here rarely ate spicy food, so she made a mild spice base. At the same time, she also boiled a pot of bones with mushroom soup. Together with Zhao Cheng's lamb spine hot pot, it should be enough. The remaining soup base had to be slowly pushed out, or there would be no surprises in the future. After she was done, she began to mix the sauce. As for Gu Chungrui, he took a look at the skewers. After ensuring they passed the test, he helped cut the mutton into pieces. Soon, a few beggars began shouting on the street with their brochures. They were also smart enough to find well-dressed people to distribute the flyers. In the afternoon, they even turned around and went to the Yunshan Academy in town. It was full of scholars and was also where rich people gathered. At the same time, Sun Hongliang came over and began to get busy with the waiters. Soon, Manager Liu came with a congratulatory gift, followed by Dr. Luo. The patriarch, the clan elders, the village chief, Father Gu, and even the second Uncle Gu were here. Finally, it was Chang Shun, the head of their manor. As for Uncle Nian, although he was invited, he didn't come as he didn't like to stand out. Father Gu and second Uncle Gu looked at the huge restaurant with complicated expressions. Who would have thought that the person they had abandoned would have the ability to support such a big restaurant? If they had known earlier, he would not have taken that step no matter what. After everyone in the village sat down, second Uncle Gu looked at the patriarch and asked, "Brother, do you know who hired Zhou Ying? Such a big restaurant must have a powerful person backing it." "If you don't know, how would I know? If there's good food, just eat it," the patriarch warned. The opening was a big day. If they dared cause trouble, he would definitely teach them a good lesson. Father Gu and second Uncle Gu were embarrassed, but they weren't stupid. It was obvious that Chungrui and his wife were going up the ladder, so why would they find trouble with them? Even if there were something, they would discuss it in private. Next, a few neighbors on the same street came in. Zhou Huiming came in with a few county and town officials when it was almost time to open. Seeing Sun Hongliang, he was stunned. It's you, Wares." When he said this, he suddenly remembered Gu Shengrui's request and immediately changed his words. "Should I call for the head chef?" "You're talking about Manager Zhou, right?" "That's right, Manager Zhou. I've brought her a few distinguished guests today, so it's better for her to come out and get to know them. Please wait a moment." Sun Hongliang turned and ran to the back kitchen. He called Zhou Ying out, and Gu Chungrui followed. Chapter 146 Opening 2. "Mr. Zhou, Brother Zhou." The couple stepped forward and saluted. "Why are you acting like an outsider? We were family 500 years ago, so calling me Big Brother Zhou is much nicer." Zhou Huiming pointed at Zhou Ying and said. Then, he pointed to a middle-aged man with a mustache who was in his 30s and introduced him. "This is our county's new county mayor, Mr. Kong. He is also this year's top scholar. Pleased to make your acquaintance, Mr. Kong." The couple immediately bowed. "You're welcome. I am here with Mr. Zhou for a delicious meal, so we'll have to ask for your recommendations." Mr. Kong smiled as he stepped forward to help them up. Zhou Huiming then introduced them to the newly appointed county governor. He was a tall and thin man in his 40s with a mustache. He was also one of the few top scholars in the county, and his name was Bai Jinping. Then it was the secretaries and the advisor. The last was the town chief, Tianjingzhong, who was also the constable of this town. He was a man in his 40s, and his stomach was as big as a pregnant woman's. After the introduction, Sun Hongliang immediately walked over and said anxiously, "Manager Zhou, it's time for the opening." "So? Then let's start." Zhouing decided and said to Zhou Huaiming, "Big brother Zhou, are you interested in attending the opening ceremony?" "Sure, let's go together with brother Gu then." Zhou Huaiming nodded and walked out with Gu Chungrui. Seeing this, the others also hurriedly followed. When Sun Hongliang saw this, he immediately arranged for the workers outside to start setting off the firecrackers. Zhouing scattered the fruit candies wrapped in oil paper she had prepared earlier into the crowd. At the same time, the sound of cannons rang out. Gu Chungrui and Zhou Huaiming each pulled down the red silk on one side. In an instant, the black and red characters of House of Grassland Taste were presented in front of everyone. There were also 2 cartoon figures of a cow and a sheep drawn on the banner. Everyone's eyes lit up, and the children cheered. After a while, Sun Hongliang stepped forward and thanked everyone. Then, he told them about the 30% discount and the membership card. There are different kinds of food with a unique experience here. Everyone is welcome to come to the House of Grassland Taste and try it. So would the ingredients used be from the grassland? Someone in the crowd asked. It seems so, with mutton as the main selling point. Let's try them out and see how special they claim to be. The person to his left answered, "Let's go." There's a 30% discount today, and in the future, it'll only be 10% at most. It's a waste not to take advantage of it. The person on his right added. Afterward, the 3 walked into the restaurant together, and Sun Hongliang quickly welcomed them in. On the other hand, Gu Chungrui brought Zhou Huaiming and the others, including manager Liu, into a private room on the 2nd floor. Finally, at everyone's request, they were arranged to go to the chest-decorated room. Zhouing personally prepared a pot of the most expensive tea sold here, the sparrow's tongue. At the same time, she also prepared a plate of snacks, fried broad beans with crispy peanuts. Finally, she warmed a pot of water for them on the stove and asked, "Sirs, is there anything you don't like? Maybe not too spicy or stimulating?" "Oh, are there so many options on your menu?" Manager Liu asked in surprise. "I guess so. The mutton is slightly gamey to some, and so is the chili. So if you can't eat spice, we'll have to arrange other dishes. We're here to taste the food anyway, so you can just arrange it for us. If there's a taboo, you can just tell us later." Zhou Huaiming said. "All right, then I will go and make the arrangements." Zhouing responded and turned to go out. She arranged a slightly spicy hot pot with cabbage, radish, winter melon, agarwood, blood tofu, white tofu, shrimp, fish, shredded pork, tofu, and vermicelli. The meat used in the hot pot was naturally mutton ribs. Chapter 147 Opening 3. After much consideration, she arranged for some skewers and 3 light dishes, such as asparagus, tofu, and dried eggplant with garlic. They arranged 3 more side dishes, a plate of Sichuan pickled vegetables, sweet and sour garlic, and a plate of mixed radishes. The skin of the radish was crunchy, and the red color made it appetizing. At the other end, Gu Chungrui was carrying tea and snacks to the patriarch and the rest of the people sitting in the hall. "Elders, shall we escort you to the private room upstairs?" "No, there are limited private rooms. I think there will be more people coming in, so it's better to leave it to the rich. Just give us more delicious food, and it's fine." The patriarch shook his head. "Have these as your starter. The food will be ready in about 15 minutes. Chungrui, is that Lord Zhou, the second son of the general, Zhou Huaiming?" Second Uncle Gu asked in a low voice. "Yes, but he's on an errand right now, so we'd better pretend we don't know. How did you 2 meet?" "I've treated his illness once. You guys eat up. I still have to prep more stuff in the kitchen." Gu Chungrui turned around and walked to the back kitchen. "Don't tell me this restaurant is his?" Second Uncle Gu looked at Father Gu with uncertainty. Father Gu rolled his eyes at him. Gu Chungrui didn't reveal anything, so how would he know? However, even if it didn't belong to Zhou, it might have been Gu Shengruis. Otherwise, Zhou Huaiming wouldn't have brought other officials to support them. "Oh, right, The third prince is guarding the navy at Dongyang town. Could it be that they've gotten in touch with the third prince? The patriarch looked at them, exchanging looks, and hit the table in a bad mood. He warned vaguely, "Do what you're supposed to do. You've just sunk your ship, so it's better not to stick your heads out. Otherwise, you'll be beaten down." He hadn't thought much about it before and assumed the Chow family bullying the Gu family was because of an old grudge. However, this time, the Chow family's incident implicated the former county governor and his wife's family. Thinking about it this way, this matter was much more complicated than they thought. It was better to have their heads down for a few years. Father Gu nodded. He also knew something was wrong, but since General Zhou's son was here, there shouldn't be a problem as long as they didn't overstep their boundaries. In a small noodle shop diagonally across, the previous manager of Dongxing Restaurant, Wang Quan, respectfully said to the young man in his 20s, "Young master, did you see them? It's the man standing with Zhou Huaiming and the woman giving out sweets who saved Zhou Huaiming. I can see that. They're young, but they sure are capable." Qiao Lanxing snorted coldly. The young man was elder Qiao's son, previously studying abroad. "What about the thing I asked you to do? Can my mother and Lon Lon be exchanged?" he asked. Constable Li said that we can only exchange for one of them. Otherwise, without restraint, it would be troublesome if rumors spread when they arrive. "I can only change one?" "Yes, we can only change one. Besides, he's being watched closely by that Zhou guy. We can't do many things, so we have to exchange as soon as possible." Qiao Lanxing hesitated for a moment before saying, "Then let him do it according to the situation. He'll get whoever he can." "Understood." At this point, Wang Quan paused and continued, "By the way, young master, there are 2 workers who were previously working in our restaurant working there now. Should we get in touch with them?" "Are you stupid? If even you know they used to be employees of the Dongxing restaurant, how could they not know? Since they knew and still hired them, they would definitely be watched. We can't make any moves now, at least not before Zhou Huaiming leaves, or else all of us are dead." Chapter 148 Opening 4. Soon, Zhou Huaiming and the others were about to pay the bill. Zhouing walked out and said, "Big brother Zhou, you're treating me like an outsider now. Why are you paying at your restaurant? Today is different as I'm treating them. Otherwise, they'll think that I'm not sincere." Zhou Huaiming laughed and looked at Sun Hongliang. "Bill, please. Also, give me one of those membership cards." "Sure, please wait a moment." Sun Hongliang glanced at Zhouing, and seeing that she didn't stop him, he lowered his head and got to work. Zhouing looked at them and said, "Sirs, how do you like the food? If you have any suggestions, please let us know. We can improve it." "Yes, yes. Don't be polite. Just say what you have to say." Zhou Huaiming turned his head and added. Soon after, he was the first to speak up. "I like the food. It's just that I'll have to go back and change my clothes after this meal." "Yes, yes, I'll be good if it can be ventilated." County Mayor Kong shook his head and added, "But the weather is too cold, so that will be difficult. We have to think of a way to solve this. We'll think about it later." Zhouing nodded in agreement. To be honest, she had forgotten about this. However, even if she did not forget, there was no ventilation system in this period. It seemed that she had to find a carpenter to modify an exhaust fan. "Does anyone else have more suggestions?" she asked. "The dishes in your restaurant are indeed delicious, but the overall taste is slightly bland. The people in our area have a preference for a strong taste, after all." Manager Liu said, "That's true, but the numbing and spice are just to my taste. I'll come and try the other pots when I'm free." Tian Jingzhong said with a smile, "You're welcome at any time." Zhouing nodded. As for the others, they were all fine and didn't raise any opinions. They might have had nothing to say. After Zhou Huaiming got the VIP-looking membership card, the others also asked for one. Zhouing then sent them out after everything was done. Then, she sent the patriarch and the others out but didn't accept their money. The response he got was that the food was good, but the restaurant's interior was a little too stuffy. After a busy morning and 4 whole turnovers in the afternoon, everyone was exhausted. In particular, a few workers had run so much that their legs were jellified. Gu Shengru's hands trembled as he cut the meat, and Zhou Ying's heart ached when she saw this. She stepped forward and held his hand. You've worked hard, Rue. Let's not use a knife in the afternoon and switch to using a shredder. No, it'll be troublesome if we're discovered. Gu Chengrue shook his head. I'm talking about the guillotine-like knife-cutting tool. We can try that. After lunch, they cleaned the kitchen and returned to their rooms to rest. Zhou took out a guillotine meat cutter from her interspace. Then the husband and wife sliced the meat in the kitchen. Because of the cold weather, they were not afraid of the sliced meat sticking together. So, the two of them worked together for the entire afternoon. After finishing that, Zhou stir-fried more base ingredients and mixed more dipping sauce. She didn't care about anything else. Most of the people who came in the evening were students at the academy. Some came to taste it after hearing the news, but there weren't many of them, so the overall number of customers was much lower. After sending off the last guest, Zhou waited for Sun Hongliang to calculate the bill before asking, "Brother Sun, how much is today's revenue?" 778 taels. The total gross profit is 352 taels. Of course, the remaining 5 sets of lamb chops are not counted. If we count them in, we should be able to add another 2 taels, Sun Hongliang said. Chapter 149, specially waiting for them. It looks like our hard work wasn't in vain. I see that there's still some lamb spine left, so let's have a hearty meal and finish all the remaining dishes. How about it? Zhou glanced at the tired crowd and suggested. Li Yu, in particular, was nodding off. She was about to fall asleep. However, they immediately perked up when everyone heard Zhou Ying's offer. Then, everyone started to set the food up, and soon, the hot pot was served. After the meal, Zhou spoke up, saying, "Everyone looks tired, so remember to boil some water to soak your feet. You all can wake up a bit later tomorrow. They'll have to trouble you to get the meat earlier tomorrow." She looked at Feng Qing and added, "Don't worry, madam. I won't delay anything." "All right, we'll be going back now." Zhou ended the discussion as she stood up. "It's already so late. May I humbly suggest that you two stay here for the night?" Li Sheng suggested. "No, I still have things to do at home. Remember to lock the doors and windows at night before going to bed." After Zhou finished reminding them, she walked home with Gu Chengrue. What they didn't expect was for Tian Jiawang to follow them. Gu Chengrue turned his head and said, "Brother Tian, you don't have to come with us, and well, just let your sister know that you won't be coming back for the night. It's fine. I'm worried about the 3 of them at home. It's all right since I have you two to accompany me. Let's go." Tian Jiawang explained as he headed forward. The couple could only follow behind him. In the village, Zhou could hear Erzhuang's aggrieved whining from afar. She turned her head and asked, "Rue, why don't we bring Erzhuang along when we go out tomorrow? We shouldn't starve him anymore." "You can take him out if you want to. It'll be safer to have him with us on the way back, but don't leave anything valuable in the house." "I know, Brother Tian," Gu Chengrue said when they arrived at his house. "We will set off tomorrow at 11 a.m. tomorrow." "All right. Just call me when you're leaving." Tian Jiawang walked home after saying goodbye. After the couple returned home, Gu Chengrue went to heat the brick bed while Zhou entered her inner space and quickly made half a pot of black noodle soup for Erzhuang, adding 2 sticks of sausage to it. Erzhuang only stopped whining after he had a hot meal. After that, the husband and wife went to the inner space to take a hot bath before going to sleep. The next day, the couple cleaned up the house and rushed to town with Tian Jiawang and Erzhuang. It was another busy day, but because there was no discount, the number of people was smaller. But their daily income was still more than 200 taels of silver, which relieved Zhou. Otherwise, she was afraid she could not afford to hire this many people. They used up an average of 4 sheep and about half a cow, so 200 taels should be enough to cover their daily expenses. As things got more stable, Zhou Ying's daily tasks were reduced. She no longer needed to do anything besides cook the base ingredients and dipping sauce. Mrs. Li took over the task of slicing meat. Zhou found an environmentally friendly black paint to modify the meat slicing machine to pass off as something normal to avoid attracting attention. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed. The restaurant's business was on the right track, and Gu Shengrui's clinic was getting busier. One evening, as Zhouing brought Erzhuang home, they saw Father Gu wandering around their house as soon as they entered the village. When he saw her, he stood still. This was how Zhouing knew he was waiting for her, or Gu Chengrui. "Father, are you all right?" She walked over after a moment of hesitation. Father Gu nodded and smiled dryly. "Why did you come back alone? Where's Chengrui? He still has patients, and he might have to stay at the clinic tonight." Chapter 150 Regret. It's not safe for you to go back and forth on your own. If it's late, don't come back. Father Gu said, "I understand, Father." Then, they'll leave you to your work. After Zhouing finished speaking, she went home with Erzhuang. Father Gu wanted to say something, but stopped himself. In the end, he didn't call out to her. After Zhouing had gone far away, she wondered why Father Gu was looking for them this time. Could it be to borrow money? After that, she shook her head and tossed him to the back of her mind. When she got home, she went to the shed and let Erzhuang go. Zhouing then went to her inner space to make some shredded chicken porridge. After giving Erzhuang half a bowl, she ate hers with a fried tomato egg. After that, she started to work in the space. On the other end, after Father Gu returned home, Mrs. Liu hurriedly asked, "Darling, how is it? Did they agree?" Father Gu shook his head. "Only Zhouing came back, so I was embarrassed to ask." "Darling, Zhouing is the one who can cook, not Chengrui." Mrs. Liu spoke with a speechless expression. "You have the nerve to ask for something from your daughter-in-law? I'm not that thick-skinned." Father Gu glared at her. "Then why don't we go to the clinic to find Chengrui tomorrow? Otherwise, our small shop won't be able to support itself any further." Mrs. Liu said with a smile. "Then let's talk about it tomorrow, and let's have dinner." Father Gu sat down at the main table after that. When Mrs. Liu saw this, she told Mrs. Sun and Mrs. Gua to set the table. The next day, Father Gu went to the clinic early in the morning but was told Chengrui was at the restaurant, so he had no choice but to go over. When he came over, the couple was having breakfast. Gu Chengrui was stunned for a moment before asking, "Father, have you eaten yet? If not, you can make do with it here." "I've already eaten. You guys hurry up and eat, and he'll wait for you in the front," Father Gu said, and he went to the main hall. At the same time, Father Gu complained inwardly. This early in the morning, and he's eating millet porridge, baked biscuits, meat, and even some side dishes. If this is just making do, what did I eat for breakfast? Pig food? It seemed that the young couple had gotten back on their feet. Perhaps they could resume their lives in the capital one day. Thinking of this, there was a burst of regret. Zhouing wasn't a jinx but a money-making girl. He couldn't help but start disliking Mrs. Liu and Mrs. Yao for their actions. He would not have acted so coldly against the couple back then if they hadn't been fanning the flames. After he left, Zhouing told him about Father Gu waiting for them yesterday. "There must be something he wants to talk to you about. Be careful and don't fall into his trap." "Don't worry, he's not my biological father. I won't be affected by false kinship." Gu Chengrui nodded. After that, the two of them finished their breakfast quickly. After the meal, Gu Chengrui went to the front, while Zhouing took the bowls and chopsticks to the kitchen and started her work. Gu Chengrui went over with a pot of tea and a plate of peanuts left over from yesterday. After sitting down, he poured his father a cup of tea and said, "Father, have a cup of tea to warm your body." "Aye." Father Gu responded, then pointed to the exhaust fan on the window and asked, "What's that? Why is there a hole in the window? Wouldn't it make here?" "That's an exhaust fan. Previously, everyone felt that the smell of smoke was too strong, so we got a carpenter to make that." "Is it useful?" "It works, but it can only move when someone is pulling it." "Doesn't that mean you have to recruit more people?" "Yes, I hired a few beggars, and they will come over to help out during mealtimes." It didn't cost much. As soon as he said that, Father Gu thought of the opening day when a group of beggars was giving out flyers on the street. He couldn't help but say, "You're sure good at hiring. Beggars are much cheaper than normal people." Chapter 151. A good idea, I guess you can call it that way, but it's not that complicated to hand out flyers. These beggars can get a meal with their work too. You're right. Father Gu coughed twice and added, I came here today to ask for your help. Do say, and we will definitely help if we can. Gu Chengrue nodded. Because he wasn't surprised, Father Gu knew that Zhouing had most likely told Gu Chengrue about him looking for them. He openly declared his request. Do you know that your Aunt Lu and second aunt are running a pastry shop? I've seen them selling royal desserts and pastries. Yes, but it's too expensive and hard to sell in this small town. Father Gu was a little embarrassed when he said this. But in the end, he continued, so, I am here to ask Zhouing if she has any ordinary dessert recipes. Otherwise, I'm scared that the small shop won't be able to survive. I can only discuss this with Zhouing, as I don't know the details. Please hurry up. They'll head back for now. Father Gu stood up and said, All right, I'll give you a reply tonight. Sure. You continue your work. Father Gu turned around and walked out after he finished speaking. After sending him off, Gu Chengrue returned to the kitchen and told Zhouing about the matter. Zhouing laughed. He still has the nerve to ask for this? So shameless. He's thick-skinned, but what do we do now? Are we giving it to him or not? It's simple to make mung bean cakes and the like, so I don't believe they don't know those. They're most likely interested in the desserts Chun Young makes. But that's our signature dessert, and we can't give it to them. All right, let's give them the mung bean cake, red bean cake, yellow pea cake, and chestnut cake recipes. All right, they'll reply to them this evening. Gu Chengrue went to his clinic after saying his goodbyes. After he left, Zhouing felt that the desserts they were offering were too little, so she taught Chun Young the recipe for a series of rice cakes and steamed cakes, asking her to try making them when she was free. At the same time, she was also indirectly letting the Gu family know she wasn't someone they could bully. After she was done, she began to stir-fry 2 pots of hot pot ingredients. After she saw that the base ingredients were enough in the afternoon, she mixed the dipping sauce for the hot pot and went to the manor after telling Gu Chengrue in his clinic. Because the restaurant needed tofu and vermicelli, it wasn't a good idea to always make them in her inner space. She planned to build a workshop in the manor so that the people in the manor could have some income and she could relax a little. When she arrived at the manor, she immediately found Chang Shun and told him about the matter. She asked, Uncle Chang, what do you think? It's a good idea. There's no work in the village now, and the strong laborers are going to the labor market daily for work. But now that it's getting cold, there's not much work on the dock. If we can build a workshop, it'll solve a big problem. The best thing about this is that we can work all year round. All right, this matter is settled then. However, beans are scarce in our area because of the bean sprout hype this year. We'll use what we have in our own restaurant this year. We'll expand the production when the river opens tomorrow and import beans from other places. What about the beans for this year? Do we buy them from the grain shop? We do have to buy some, but I've saved some before. When the workshop is done, we'll use those beans first. All right, where should we set up the workshop? Let's set it up in the second courtyard first. We'll build a workshop next year when we're renovating the house, so you have to maintain the house well for now. Sure, don't worry. That's all. They'll leave the recruitment to you, so remember to find someone who has difficulties at home but is clean and tidy. Chapter 152. Do you want it or not? After Zhouing got up and gave him a tale of silver, she told him about the tools he needed to buy, especially the grinding stone. The ones they had were shipped to the restaurant. As for the other tools they needed to make tofu, she could use the ones at home. After that, she went home. Seeing that it was still early, she wanted to go into her interspace to make a seafood feast. However, just as she was about to lock up, she saw Sister Tian walking over. She had no choice but to let her into the house. I haven't been here for a day, and it's rather cold in the house. Sister, please sit down first, and I'll start a fire. There's no need as it's just a few words. They'll leave after I'm done. Sure. What is it? Well, Dehua has been quieter than before and doesn't like to go out to play. So, I was wondering if you could let her help out in the restaurant. She doesn't need a paycheck, Just 2 meals will do, and I just want her to be in contact with more people. After Zhouing heard this, she thought of the well-behaved and sensible De Hua and then of Chun Yang, who was always physically exhausted. Finally, she nodded and said, "That's no problem. So just let her follow Brother Tian to work every day." "Thank you so much, sister. I've caused you trouble." "No, no. Also, I will give her a salary and arrange for her to work under a pastry chef. As for whether she can learn anything, it will depend on her." After hearing this, Sister Tian's eyes suddenly lit up. It was always a good thing to learn some craft. Once she learned it, it would be her own. In the future, she would be confident when she married into her in-laws' house. Thinking of this, she nodded. "I thank you on behalf of De Hua. You and your husband are really saviors of our family." "You're exaggerating. You've helped us a lot too. Just tell De Hua to learn well when she gets there." "Oh, of course. They'll let you get back to your job and tell De Hua the good news." Elder Sister Tian thanked Zhouing and hurriedly walked back. After she left, Zhouing locked the door and then started a fire. After adding some firewood, she entered her interspace to make a feast. When she was done, she opened the door and waited for Gu Chungrui to return. On the other end, Gu Chungrui was at the Gu residence. After telling Mrs. Liu and Mrs. Yao the recipes, he was about to leave when suddenly, Mrs. Liu called out to him, "Chungrui, aren't you trying to fool us? These few recipes aren't difficult. Take it or leave it. This is my wife's own recipe, and the rest is the craftsmanship taught to her by her master. Those are our restaurant's signature desserts, and I can't give those to you." Gu Chungrui stated firmly, and he returned home with Erzhuang, who was playing with Gu Chengxi. "Darling, look at him." Mrs. Liu turned her head and wanted to complain about Gu Chungrui. However, Father Gu chided her. "I think you don't know what's good for you. If you think the recipe is plain, you can create one yourself." Indeed, although these recipes are ordinary, they are suitable for selling in small shops. The lotus crisp you made is delicious, but how many customers bought it? Also, I've told you about the date cake, which is delicious and cheap. You're just lazy, reaching beyond your grasp and always thinking about making big money without doing any actual work. If you really can't do it, Mrs. Gua and Mrs. Sun will go to town, and you can stay here to do the housework." Madame Chiao said this, shaking her head in disappointment. "Mother, well, listen to you and try it tomorrow. We so happen to have some green beans at home." Mrs. Yao heard the anger in Madame Chiao's words and hurriedly assured her. But Madame Chiao didn't pay any more attention but looked at Mrs. Liu. "It's time for you to take care of Chengye's marriage. So, stop looking for some wealthy young lady. Just find a good-looking and capable farmer's girl with a tight-knit family." Chapter 153. Angry, but Chengye is, Mrs. Liu sternly retorted. The eldest son, Gu Chengzi's wife, was the legitimate daughter of a fourth-rank official. Mrs. Liu knew she shouldn't expect a girl of that standard with their family's current situation, but at least a girl better than Zhouing. No matter what, she should at least be the daughter of a landlord. She would rather die than find an illiterate farmer's daughter to be her daughter-in-law. But before she could finish, Madame Chiao knocked the ground with her walking stick and scolded, "Look at the situation clearly, will you? We are deemed guilty by the officials. Any of our family members can't take the imperial examination for 3 generations and can't be officials in court. Even if there is a wealthy young lady who is willing to marry Chengye, aren't you afraid that he would suffer in his in-laws' family in the future? Did you think that you would hold the pants in this marriage? You sure you aren't afraid she'll order you around like a maid? The daughter of a good family might not even be willing to marry into the family and suffer the anger of a bastard like you. Mother, calm down. She's just bad-tempered." Father Gu saw his mother really get angry and quickly went forward to comfort her. He didn't expect Madame Chiao to push him away. "You're not any better, and don't keep thinking about restoring your former glory all day long. It's not so easy to achieve those without some luck. It's better to humbly settle our family's affairs and live a steady life. Down to earth. Don't you even understand what that means? Look at Chungrui and his wife. It wasn't easy to go up the mountain to pick herbs and make tofu, but they still managed to get by. Look at you guys now. Madame Chow was so angry that she gasped for breath, shook her head, and wiped her tears. It's all my fault. If I had known that this day would come, I would have made you suffer more when you were young so that you wouldn't be so arrogant and have difficulty even making a living now. After that, she trembled, returned to her room, and didn't even finish eating her meal. Everyone else in the room stared at each other, not knowing what to say. All right, let's eat. Mrs. Liu will bring food to Mother in a moment to apologize. After being stunned for a while, Father Gu finally returned to his senses and replied. Mrs. Liu was unwilling when she heard this, so she said to Gu Chengya, "Son, you go?" Gu Chengya hesitated for a moment, but still agreed. He followed Mrs. Gua to get the food. Big brother, do you think Mother is envious of Chengruwei and his wife? Second uncle asked in a low voice. Of course, Father Gu said thoughtfully. Seeing Shengru's family life getting better while our days are getting worse, she must be angry. You don't say. Chengruwei and his wife are indeed capable. Of course, they work every day from early morning until late at night. Which one of us can take it? In the past, we always said that Mrs. Liu and the others couldn't see reality clearly, but we are the same. Our family really can't stand any more turmoil, not to mention that we still have to give the clan 30 taels of silver for the boat at the end of the year. So, we're not buying a boat? That's not realistic. We'll rent a boat when the river opens. But for now, let's think about what to transport or what business we can do. Otherwise, it's useless to have a boat. Tomorrow, you can go to the shop and keep an eye on them to see how they do business. Otherwise, if we continue to lose money like this, we won't even be able to have a meal next year. Okay, I'll go to the shop and keep an eye on it tomorrow. Second Uncle Gu nodded. On the other side, Xiao Lanlan and the others who were exiled had reached the place of the snow disaster and met with many refugees who had fled. Chapter 154 Mother Qiao's death, not to mention Xiao Lanlan and the others in exile. Even the officers escorting them were unwilling to take another step forward. However, they couldn't explain themselves if they didn't send her to their destinations, so they could only vent their anger on Xiao Lanlan and the others, especially Mother Qiao, whose health wasn't good to begin with, and she hadn't done any vigorous exercise for many years. She had already reached her limit long ago in this journey. After she staggered and fell to the ground, an officer came forward and gave her 2 lashes with his whip. Hurry up. If you dawdle any longer, I won't be able to complete my mission before the new year. Officer, please stop. My mother really can't walk anymore. Why don't we take a break? Xiao Lanlan kneeled and begged. When the others heard this, they immediately agreed. It was difficult to walk in the snow. They were all exhausted and couldn't move. Rest my ass. I want to rest, but look at this cold weather. Is there any place to rest? Or do you want to freeze to death in the snow? If that's the case, they'll fulfill your wish so we can go back and report our mission. When the officer said this, he kicked Mother Qiao. Hurry up. Well treated as if you're dead if you don't leave. No. Let's go. I'm okay. Mother Qiao hurriedly got up. Seeing this, Xiao Lanlan could only support her mother and continue forward, while the others didn't say anything else. What a bunch of ingrates, said the officer. Never honest if they don't get whipped once or twice. Xiao Lanlan gritted her teeth. He better not let her get an opportunity, or she would definitely kill him. She just didn't know if her big brother had managed to escape the arrest of the soldiers. If he did, why wasn't he here to save them? Mother Qiao fell to the ground and dragged her along just as she was thinking. Her entire body hurt from the fall, and she was whipped before she could make a sound. The tail of the whip hit her head, and her view darkened. She heard another gust of wind. Just as she was about to dodge, a body pressed down on her, and a storm of kicks came. Then, her mother spat a mouthful of blood on her face, which made her scream. Perhaps because her screams were too heartbreaking, the officers finally stopped. Cough. Mother Qiao coughed violently, then her head tilted to the side as she vomited large mouthfuls of blood, shocking everyone. When Xiao Lanlan realized something was wrong, She quickly pushed Mother Chow off her and pulled her into her arms. Mother, don't scare me. Lon Lon, live well and wait for your brother. In the future, remember. Mother Chow spoke intermittently, and she didn't finish her sentence. She choked on the cold wind, coughed violently, and spat out more mouthfuls of blood. After that, she raised her hand and touched Chow Lanlin's face reluctantly. However, before Mother Chow's hand could touch her face, it drooped down, and then her head tilted to the side. She stopped breathing. Chow Lanlon immediately froze. The officer went forward to check Mother Chow's nose because the situation wasn't good. After realizing she was no longer breathing, he had to call his companions and pull her up. What are you doing? Let go of my mother. You murderers. Let go of my mother. Chow Lanlon roared in anger. However, the officers ignored her and even whipped her twice. They hastily dug a snow pit and buried her in it. Chow Yuan, who was not far away, had looked at Chow Lanlon with hatred, indifference, and even ridicule. She wouldn't have brought them such disaster if it weren't for her shamelessness. Chapter 155. Escape. Now that she had caused her mother's death, he felt some sympathy for her. However, it wasn't that he sympathized with her, but rather if she would regret her previous betrayal. Would she regret doing it because of Gu Shengrui's charm despite knowing they couldn't be together and eventually harming others? Did she regret it? Of course, Chow Lanlon regretted it long ago, but she didn't know Gu Chungrui had saved Zhou Huaiming, so she never felt that she had done anything wrong. However, after seeing what happened to her mother and having her mother die in her arms, she finally knew what she did wrong. Just like her father had said, they were enemies. Even if Gu Chungrui knew Zhou Huaiming would harm the Chow family after he recovered, he wouldn't have said anything. At this thought, a glint of hatred flashed in her eyes. The officer didn't know what she was thinking, so when he saw her eyes full of hatred, he thought she was targeting him. He went up and gave her a whip. Let's go quickly. We can only be safe if we get out of the snow zone as soon as possible. After that, he muttered a few words to the others, and they became wary of Chow Lanlon. If she did anything aggressive, she would be beaten up immediately. 3 days passed just like that. On the night of the third day, an officer quietly called Chow Lanlon out. At first, Chow Lanlon didn't want to go. She was afraid they would do something to her, but these few days, she had been beaten constantly, so, in the end, she obediently followed. After walking to some ruins not far away, the officer said, "Go. Someone wants to see you." Chow Lanlon was stunned for a moment. She thought of her brother and immediately walked out. Under the light of the snow, she could vaguely see that it was a man who wasn't very tall. There was a person at his feet, or rather, a corpse. She realized something and quickly said, "Mister, are you here to pick me up?" "Yes, I heard that your mother is gone," the man said in a deep voice. "Yes, it was 3 days ago." Chow Lanlon said indignantly, "Why did you only come now? My mother would still be alive. We can only save one. So, isn't that great? Or do you prefer that I make a choice?" The man said in a bad mood. "Scream a few times. The more painful sounding, the better," said the man. After saying that, he started to howl like a wolf. At first, Chow Lanlin's face turned pale, but she quickly understood what he meant and started to scream. When the officer from before came over, he asked Chow Lanlon to change her clothes quickly. She tore the clothes apart and threw them near the corpse. Then, Chow Lanlon realized that the corpse had been bitten to the point that it no longer looked human. There was a wolf's corpse on the side, and she was so scared that she couldn't help but tremble. "Let's go? Or do you really want to be eaten by wolves?" The man stepped forward to grab her, then immediately turned around and left. The officer also pretended to shout to attract others' attention to her miserable state. Then he left in a hurry. Soon, another wolf arrived and tore the corpse into pieces, which were already beyond recognition. In the county office, Zhou Huaiming handed over the information about the 1,000 troops stationed here to County Mayor Kong and said a few words. "They'll leave the rest to you, Mr. Kong. They'll be returning to the camp tomorrow." Are you in a hurry? If not, why not leave a day later? Tomorrow, let's go for another meal of hot pot. County Mayor Kong suggested. Zhou Huiming hesitated for a moment. Sure, let's go then. They'll bring some back if it's convenient for my cousin. They'll treat you this time. No need. They'll pay. You just have to remember to take care of the couple in the future, as long as they don't break the law. Chapter 156 Farewell 1. No problem. County Mayor Kong paused and asked some more. By the way, are you really going to keep Constable Li and Xiao Lomping alive? I heard they're planning to bring Xiao Lan Lan and her mother back. Yes, because I discovered that an underground force is helping them. They can be used to lure those people out. Well, wait for all the underground forces here to gather before we capture them all in one fell swoop. Otherwise, once they've settled down and grown, they'll cause us more trouble. I understand. Okay, they'll leave you to your work. I have to go back and pack up as I'll leave town tomorrow. Zhou Huiming turned around and walked out. After he left, County Mayor Kong read the garrison's situation and shook his head. No wonder the previous governor acted like a king. How much did he spend bribing these people? On the other end, Gu Chungrui returned and saw the seafood feast on the table when he entered the inner space. He was drooling, especially after noticing the steamed abalone with garlic vermicelli and lobster. Look at you, Zhouing scolded with a smile. Hurry up and wash your hands. I've been here for 2 months and haven't had any seafood other than crab. I'm craving this so badly. When Gu Chungrui said this, he saw a bottle of normal liquor on the table and paused. Babe, let's have the bottle of white wine, and that would be perfect to go with the seafood. No problem. Let's have a feast then. Zhouing said as she put the alcohol aside and went to the warehouse to open a bottle of high-end white wine. After they had their fill, Gu Chungrui told Zhouing about his visit to the Gu family. We don't have to give them anything more next time. Mrs. Liu is just insatiable, and the shamelessness of her attitude is unbearable. True. Since they don't like it, don't even think about asking for more in the future. Zhouing nodded in agreement. After that, the couple got up and went to do their things. The next day, as soon as Zhouing arrived at the restaurant, she saw Sun Hongliang entertaining Zhou Huiming and County Mayor Kong. She paused for a moment before walking over and asking, Brother Zhou, Mr. Kong, why are you here this early? I'm returning to the military camp today, so I came to say goodbye and have a hot pot while I'm at it. By the way, can I take this pot with me? Zhou Huiming asked. I also want to take away 2 sets of ingredients. Of course, they'll prepare the base ingredients for you, and you can buy the meat yourself. Zhouing replied. They'll have to trouble manager Zhou to prepare 2 sets for me too. County Mayor Kong requested. No problem. We'll go and prepare now while you guys chat. Zhouing later asked a worker to go to the clinic and call Gu Chungrui back. Meanwhile, she went to the kitchen and started to pack the base and dipping sauce for them in a can. After she was done, she wrote down the instructions and dosage. The rest was made into a hot pot and served to them. Zhou Huiming saw her coming over and pointed to the seat next to Gu Chungrui. Since the restaurant isn't busy right now, let your workers prepare the rest, and we should have a meal together. Sure, why not? This meal is our farewell party for Brother Zhou. I wish you a safe journey. Zhouing said as she sat beside Gu Chungrui. You make it sound like I'm trying to escape from this meal. Zhou Huiming was stunned for a moment. No, isn't this what we should do? If you come back, remember to come and find us. Gu Chungrui quickly said. He placed half a plate of mutton into the pot and continued. This lamb meat is tender and will be cooked as soon as it curls up. Help yourself. Chapter 157 Farewell 2. Of course, I know about that, Zhou Huiming said as he picked up a piece of meat. To be honest, Zhou Ying's cooking skills are so good that I'm sure he'll be craving it in less than a month. It's good that you like it. It's cold, so why not I make some food now and then have manager Lu bring it over? Zhou Huiming nodded. No problem, but you have to make more, sister. Otherwise, there won't be enough for everyone. Of course. When they were almost done eating, She left and returned to the kitchen to wrap up the hot pot ingredients for them. Thinking of Zhou Weiming's previous words, she picked up a food basket for him. There were all sorts of snacks, like veggie rolls and crunchy peanuts. She also packed more than 10 meat biscuits and oil paper so that he could eat them after heating them on the way. After preparing, she placed the items on the counter and said to Sun Hongliang, "Mr. Zhou and the others don't need to pay for this meal today, and it's on me?" "Understood. Are these the same?" Sun Hongliang pointed at the things she had packed. "This is a personal gift. You don't have to write it down in the account books." Zhouing spoke as Gu Chungrui brought them down. Zhouing handed the things to them and reminded them, "Be careful. I put them in a clay pot." "Thank you, sister. How much is it?" Zhou Huiming took it and asked. "No need. I already said that today's meal is on us." Zhouing shook her head. "Brother Zhou, let's go while the weather is still clear." Gu Chungrui walked out with them after that. Seeing this, Zhou Huiming and County Mayor Kong didn't mention paying again. After a few polite goodbyes, they went their separate ways. However, Zhou Huiming didn't leave immediately. Instead, he went to talk to Manager Liu before he took his carriage to the military camp. On the other end, Gu Chungrui followed Zhouing back to the kitchen after their guests had left. He turned his head and said to her, "Brother Zhou just told me that Elder Qiao's son, Qiao Lanqing, hasn't been captured. Qiao Lanlan might have also been rescued, so we should be careful." "Why didn't they arrest her?" Zhouing was shocked. She thought the danger was over, but it seemed it was still around. She thought of something and asked, "Could he be fishing for a bigger fish?" "Most likely. This town is a transit station for the waterway, so it's an important strategic place. It wouldn't be peaceful soon." Gu Chungrui added, "Keep an eye on the 2 workers from the old Dongxin restaurant in case they're used by someone else. I'm going to the clinic." "Sure. Come home early tonight if there's nothing much there." After finishing her work in the afternoon, she went to the manor and taught them how to make tofu, its byproducts, and starch noodles. She only left after she guided them to make the finished products. Suddenly, Chang Shun chased after her. "Mistress, I saw that the starch noodles are made from green bean starch. Taro might also be a possible replacement, so can we change it?" "It's a good idea, but green bean noodles are the most suitable and delicious when cooked." When Zhouing said this, she thought of the taro noodles, and it should be fine if the taro noodles were used for shabu-shabu. "Try it, and see if you can make it. You must at least guarantee that it doesn't break down after being boiled in water constantly." "I understand. Let me try it, as we have quite a lot of taro in our village. If you succeed, remember to tell me." Zhouing reminded him, took Erzhuang, and went home. In the evening, after dinner was ready, Zhouing waited until the food was cold, but Gu Chungrui still didn't return home. Thinking of him as a doctor, she did not wait any longer. Instead, she left half for him and started eating. After that, she went to her inner space to wash her dirty clothes, especially the blankets she had changed out of, and dried them in the washing machine before hanging them in the villa. Chapter 158 New Year's Gift 1. She didn't expect that he still had yet to return when she finished her work. She was a little anxious, but she felt more at ease when she thought of his abilities. She would have to get an accurate answer from him in the future regarding when he would return. Otherwise, it wasn't pleasant for her to keep waiting like this. She waited for another hour, but he still didn't return. She locked the door and left with Erzhuang. They had not walked far from the village when Erzhuang broke free from her grasp and pounced on someone. Soon, Gu Shengru's laughter could be heard. She heaved a sigh of relief and waited in place. When Gu Chengrui came over, Zhouing smelled the faint smell of blood on him and asked worriedly, "Rui, you're injured?" "I'm fine, as it's not my blood. A seriously injured person came in the evening, and I stabilized him before rushing back. I'm sorry for making you worried." "It's good that you're fine. I was just afraid that Xiao Lanqing was causing you trouble." "Don't worry. If he's smart, he won't. At least not when the situation is unclear. I'm guessing he'll only make a move after he knows most of General Zhou's men and where they're stationed." Gu Chengrui added, "By the way, today is the 15th day of the 12th lunar month, and I saw many on the streets preparing New Year's goods. Shouldn't we also prepare New Year's items and gifts for each family? New Year's gift? Oh, right, but not only for the villagers but also for Manager Liu, Dr. Luo, County Mayor Kong, and more. Since we are acquaintances, we should at least show our appreciation for the new year. Zhouing nodded in agreement. If he had not mentioned it, she would have forgotten about it. After returning home, Zhouing heated dinner for him, then took out a pen and paper and wrote down a list of gifts. It was easy to prepare the villagers' gifts. They would bring some rice, noodles, meat, and more wine during the new year, which should be fine. The problematic parts were County Mayor Kong and some others. If they gave too much, it would seem that they were currying favor, and it would be ugly if they gave less. When Gu Chungrui returned, he saw her spinning her pen in a daze. He tapped her head and asked, "What are you thinking about?" "New Year's gift. What do you think should be given to County Mayor Kong and the others?" Zhouing raised her head and asked. Gu Chungrui looked at her pouting red lips and leaned in to kiss her. "Wine and tea are a must. Adding some dried fruits and meat will do. This way, it won't look like bribery, and it won't look shabby." "Fruits? Are they for sale in town now?" "Yes, they're prepared for the new year. There are mandarins, oranges, apples, and pears, and I didn't see anything else." "Is it very different from the one in our inner space?" "Huge difference. The ones in the inner space are too big and too fresh, so we can't use them. But if it's not fruit, it should be fine. Then let's buy some tomorrow and send it out as soon as possible so that you won't keep thinking about it." "All right, leave this to me." Gu Chungrui patted his chest and said. After that, the two of them entered the inner space. Gu Chungrui immediately went to work while Zhouing took out 2 pots. One was filled with pig trotters, and the other had only 3 pork trotters. She took out a large pressure cooker and started making beef sauce. After she was done, she went to the factory area and used the blender to make 3 pots of meatballs. 1 pot of fish meatballs, 1 pot of beef meatballs, and the last pot being pork meatballs. She then proceeded to freeze them. She found homemade cured meat, sausages, chicken, and fish in a warehouse. After that, she prepared a bag of the dried fruits she got from the Chow family, such as golden jujubes, longans, lotus seeds, raisins, walnuts, and so on. Finally, she added a bag of pine nuts and hazelnuts. After ensuring everything was ready, she hung the fruits outside and packed the rest. Chapter 159 New Year's Gift 2. When Gu Chungrui returned, only the smell of meat was left. He couldn't help but ask, "Babe, did you make more braised pig trotters? Your nose is almost as sharp as Erzhuang's." Zhouing laughed. "Yes, it's braised pork trotters, and I made a pot of them. I put them outside, so if you want to eat, you can when we go out later." "A New Year's gift for Brother Zhou?" "That's right. He's our patron now, so since he loves good food, we will satisfy him on that front." "You're right. Do you think we should roast 2 ducks and send them over too?" "The roast duck I made isn't authentic enough. It's just a change of taste. It's not quite the same, but it's more than enough to compete with." "All right, roast 1 more, and we'll eat it tomorrow night." After Zhouing heard this, she turned and looked over teasingly. Why did it sound like he asked because he wanted to eat it? "I'm going out to slaughter the ducks." Gu Shengrui's face turned red, and he immediately ran away. Seeing this, Zhouing didn't say anything more. It wasn't late yet, so she yeasted 500 pounds of white flour and made some bread and buns. After that, she prepared the necessary seasonings for the roast duck. The most important was the jujube wood, the crucial ingredient in the roast duck. Although other wood could be used, it would lack the fruity smoke flavor. When Gu Chungrui brought the ducks over, he had already used a small stick to prop up the duck's cavity. After washing the duck's belly with boiling water, he seared the skin, added sugar, and hung it up to dry the skin. It would take a long time, so they cleaned up a little while waiting. When the steamed buns were cooked, they put them into a warehouse and went out of the inner space to sleep. After waking up, Zhouing went back into her inner space to plug the ducks and put them on the grill to roast slowly. She took the duck down when the fat was rendered. She kept the one with slightly broken skin in the storeroom to keep it warm and took the other 2 out of the inner space. Coincidentally, Gu Chungrui had also finished preparing breakfast. After the two of them finished eating, Gu Chungrui set aside a pair of pig trotters. After all, giving a gift as a pair was better. They wrapped the rest of the things in oil paper and placed them in 2 tubs. They later used Tian Jiawang's cart to send the stuff to Manager Liu. Uncle Liu, please help us give these to General Zhou. It's a New Year's gift from us. Oh, why didn't you guys give it to him personally yesterday? He left in a hurry, and we didn't manage to make it in time. That's true. Leave it to me then. Thank you. It's full of food, so it would be to hurry up the delivery. Sure. Do you have any extra vermicelli on your side? General Zhou said it was a pity that he forgot to get some from you yesterday. Yes, of course. Please wait a moment, and we'll return to get it now. Zhouing said so and left Hongyun restaurant with Gu Chungrui. However, Gu Chungrui went to his clinic, while Zhouing and Tian Jiawang returned to her restaurant. Zhouing went to the kitchen and used that as a disguise to take out 5 pounds of vermicelli from her inner space. After hesitating, she took another 5 pounds of spicy dried tofu and 2 jars of the restaurant's most expensive green bamboo shoots. She also wrote down the recipe and eating method for the roast duck and sent them back to Hongyun restaurant. After leaving Hongyun restaurant, she wasn't in a hurry to return. Instead, she strolled around the streets and realized that there were many hawker stalls along the streets. Not only were fruits around, but there were also stalls selling beef and mutton. Although the quantity was small, there were many people around. There were all sorts of dried fruits, various desserts, and snacks. There were also frozen fish, mainly small yellow croakers and pomfrets. She also didn't expect to see second Uncle Gu and Gu Qingxi setting up a stall on the street to sell snacks. Chapter 160 New Year's Gift 3. They mainly sold the recipe she provided, along with some date cakes and yellow rice cakes. If she guessed correctly, they should also be millet cakes. Of course, there were also expensive desserts, but a cloth covered them. She had wanted to walk past them, but after seeing second Uncle Gu looking over, she had no choice but to walk over. Second Uncle, how's business? It's all right. Much better than a few days ago. How come you have time to go shopping? It's almost the new year, so I came out to buy some New Year's gifts. Oh, right. It's already the 16th, and it's time to prepare for that. You haven't tried your Aunt Lu and second aunt's cooking, have you? Second Uncle Gu asked. I'll give you some. Oh, it's all right. You should keep it and sell it for money. Zhouing quickly stopped him. Finally, she pointed at the yellow cake. This cake looks too plain. You can try adding some raisins, dried dates, or red beans on top or in the middle. That's true. They'll bring it up to them later. Second Uncle Gu nodded in agreement. All right, you guys continue. When Zhouing said this, she looked at Gu Chengxi, who was curled up in the cold. Chengxi, if you're cold, get up and move around. It will get colder sitting there. I know, third sister-in-law. Gu Chengxi raised his head and said. Zhouing was stunned when she saw the cold sores on his face, but she didn't say anything. Instead, she ordered some dried fruits, small yellow croakers, and other fish. After making the reservation, she returned to her restaurant and got busy. In the afternoon, the dried fruits, frozen fish, and fresh fruits Gu Chungrui ordered arrived. Zhouing asked for them to be placed in the warehouse. In the evening, Zhouing didn't tell Dehua to go back. Instead, she asked her to go with Qionyang and Chunyang to make as many desserts as possible so that she could gift them. The next day, after the gifts were prepared, she gave them to Sun Hongliang and Gu Chungrui. The men send the gifts in the name of Grassland Taste Restaurant. Meanwhile, she carried 2 pounds each of desserts, dried fruits, beef, and mutton to send to the neighboring shops with good relations. Of course, there were many returned gifts 3 days later. The shops nearby gave away their own goods, plus some dried fruits. As for the county mayor and the others, they returned with many gifts too. The county mayor gave a complete set of expensive stationery, 2 batches of silk cloth, 2 boxes of the most expensive desserts in the county, and a set of gold jewelry. The others were primarily rolls of cloth and different fruits. Some gave sets of silver jewelry, and some gave makeup. Dr. Luo was the most pragmatic of all. Chapter 161 New Year's Gift 4. Of course. One of them represents Hongyun Restaurant, and the other is General Zhou's personal gift. Manager Liu said with a smile. After that, he had people carry all the gifts into the backyard and said, "Oh right, General Zhou requested that I ask you for more hot pot ingredients." There wasn't enough on his side, and they almost fought. "It's a little late today. How about tomorrow? They'll send it to you tomorrow morning." "That's fine." "Oh, right, this is the list of gifts. Keep it well," Manager Liu said as he gave her the list of gifts and left with his men. Zhouing looked at the gift list and found it mainly seafood. They were mostly of the more precious big yellow croaker and sea bass. There were also 8 batches of silk, brocade, and other high-quality silks. Other than cloth, there were 4 ornaments, 4 small and 4 big vases, and some more jewelry. What puzzled her was that there were also a pair of daggers at the end. What was the meaning of this? Did he put these there to remind them that there was danger? After thinking it through, she went forward to take a look. The seafood was still frozen because of the cold weather, and she just glanced at the rest quickly. Finally, she found the box where the dagger was kept. After opening it, she saw 2 daggers covered with a leather case. She casually picked up one dagger and pulled it out. Suddenly, a cold silver light flashed, almost blinding her eyes. After getting used to it, she looked at it carefully. The appearance was ordinary, but it was not difficult to guess that this pair of daggers was precious based on the cold glint that flashed. They were probably the most expensive of all the gifts General Zhou had sent over. She kept some seafood and put it in the warehouse for the restaurant's staff to eat for the new year, while the rest were all kept in her room. When Qin Zhuang came over, they loaded all the valuable things, as well as the gifts prepared for the villagers, onto the cart and brought them home. After returning home, Zhouing put all the valuable things, including all kinds of materials, into her interspace. She then began to prepare gifts for the elders in the village. They preferred dried fruits, snacks, and meat. For the meat, she prepared 2 pounds of beef, mutton, and fish for each family. What was left were the patriarch and the village chief. She added silk clothes and an extra big yellow croaker for them. In the end, she prepared 2 batches of ordinary satin for the Gu family. She threw in a set of dark gray satin with flowers and another batch of the oldest dark green satin. Of course, these were worn mainly by men. After hesitating, she threw in a huge piece of pig's hind. Gu Chungrui laughed when he saw this. "Are you trying to avoid giving anything to Mrs. Liu and the others? If they don't mind, they can wear it too, right? Maybe they can wear it in a few years." Zhouing said it in a weird tone. To be honest, if it weren't for the fact that she had given some expensive cloths to the patriarch and the village chief, she wouldn't have given the Gu family anything. Since she had to give some, it wasn't appropriate to purposely not provide anything to Mrs. Liu and Mrs. Yao entirely, so she gave what she saw fit. "You're so polite. Are you coming with me, or do I go by myself? You can send these to the 4 elders of the clan by yourself. I'll go with you to the village chief's place, the patriarch's place, and our old house." "All right, I'll go by myself first then. We'll go to the 3 houses after dinner, so you go on ahead to start cooking," Gu Chungrui suggested and went out with the gifts. Zhouing turned around and went to start cooking. After dinner, the couple put their stuff in the inner space and went out. The first place they went to was the village chief's house. When they arrived, the whole family was still having dinner, so they politely said a few words and put down the gifts before heading their way. Next, they went to the patriarch's house. The family had already finished their meal, and only the patriarch and Mrs. Wang were chatting in the living room. After the couple entered, Gu Chungrui immediately went up to them and greeted, "Uncle, I'm here to wish you a happy new year in advance." Chapter 162 New Year's Gift 5. Come, come. Have a seat while I make some tea. The patriarch looked at the things they were carrying and smiled happily. Of course, he wasn't happy just because of their expensive gifts, and it was just that this was their first time visiting him for the new year. After noticing the expensive gifts, it showed him that they respected him a lot. "Oh, you guys, take a seat." Mrs. Wang stood up and greeted them with a smile. "Auntie, you should take the food now, especially the meat." It might spoil if you wait any further. Zhou told her as she placed the clothes on the brick bed, giving her the rest. Sure, sure. Just have a seat, and he'll be right back. Mrs. Wang took the things and went out of the living room. She quickly brought in a pot of tea and poured them a cup. After that, they greeted the couple politely, and the patriarch asked them about their lives or if they needed any help. The two of them answered that all was well. When they finished their tea and were about to leave, the patriarch smiled and said, your restaurant sells beef and mutton daily. On the 30th of the month, can you spare a cow's head to pay respects to our ancestors? I'll pay you at the market price. I've been to the meat market for the past 2 days, and it was quite in demand and hard to get. Only the head? Zhou shook her head after asking. You don't need to pay, and well, before she could finish, the patriarch interrupted. As long as it's a cow's head, it's fine. I must pay for this as this is an important matter for the clan, and it's not about favors. All right then, we'll take a break on the 28th. They'll send it to you by the 29th at the latest. Okay, thank you. Otherwise, it would have been hard to get a hold of this. You two have a good night. We still have to make a trip over there. Go on, and have a good talk there. Let me know if they don't know what's good for them and make unreasonable requests. They'll deal with them. Zhou smiled but didn't reply. Instead, she walked out with Gu Chungrui. By the time they arrived at the Gu residence, they had finished their meal. Only Father Gu and Madame Chiao were left in the living room chatting. The couple put down their gifts and said, Grandma, Dad, I wish you two a happy new year in advance. Madame Chiao immediately got up. Good. It's good that you're here. Quickly sit down so I can chat with you too. Father Gu stood up and made way for them when he saw this. He went outside and asked Mrs. Gua to prepare tea for them. Soon, everyone knew the couple was here to deliver New Year's gifts, and they all ran in one by one. They were all people who had seen all the luxury the world had to offer. If it were in the past, no one would be interested in such small gifts, but they were more than satisfied now. Especially the children, who were used to luxury. Therefore, all of them greeted the couple with smiles. Only Mrs. Liu and Mrs. Yao saw through their intentions. Even if they gave them the gifts, it wasn't something the two ladies could use, and their faces darkened. But before they could open their mouths, Madame Chiao warned them with her eyes. Don't they know what they've done before? It was already kind of them to bring so many gifts, especially cloth. What else could they be dissatisfied with? Thus, the entire room was quiet except for Madame Chiao's. She was asking how they had been these days. Naturally, Gu Chungrui didn't play it down. He emphasized the past when he lived on the mountain, and everyone was embarrassed to say anything. Even Mrs. Liu and Mrs. Yao's heads drooped. After seeing that it was effective, Gu Chungrui added, But don't worry, Grandma. We're doing fine now. At the same time, this experience also made us understand the meaning of only through suffering can one rise above others. Only after suffering will you know how to cherish your current life, and only after suffering will you be able to move forward step by step. Chapter 163 New Year's Gift 6. Well said. Only those who have suffered will know what is sweet. Madame Chiao nodded in agreement. She then looked at Zhou. I'm sorry that you've suffered in this family. Thank you for bringing Chungrui along and supporting your little family. That's right. Madame Chiao had always thought that a young master who had never suffered wouldn't be enlightened that quickly. She could still see that her two sons hadn't completely let go of their luxurious past. Only Zhou, who had grown up at the bottom of society, could survive tenaciously and influence Gu Chungrui simultaneously. This was also why Madame Chiao suddenly asked Mrs. Liu to find a farmer's girl for Gu Chungya. Unfortunately, she didn't understand that a small family couldn't live without a reliable and capable man to take care of it too. Thank you for the praise, Grandma. We husband and wife are one, so it's necessary to support each other. Zhou replied with a smile. Yes. Husband and wife are supposed to be one. Since you've both thought it through, you should be able to live your life well in the future. Madame Chiao nodded in agreement. After exchanging a few more pleasantries, the couple left. After seeing them out, Father Gu said, Both of you are newly married this year, and it's Zhou Ying's first year in the family. So, you two can come here on the 30th to spend the new year together. Gu Chungrui and Zhouing looked at each other and replied, "All right, we'll be here on time." No matter what their purpose was, they couldn't refuse him. After all, it was a custom here to spend the night together on the 30th. In addition, the whole village would have a big New Year's greeting on the morning of the first day of the new year. If they didn't go, Mrs. Liu and the others would spread the news, and the good image they had crafted would drop. Of course, if they dared to find trouble, then don't blame them for falling out. After the two returned home, they snuffed the fire and entered the inner space. Zhouing used a frying machine to stir-fry 2 pots of hot pot seasoning, cut them into small pieces, and mix a large jar of dipping sauce. Finally, she prepared 50 kilograms of vermicelli and 50 kilograms of spicy beef jerky. This should be enough for Brother Zhou. After they were done, Zhouing remembered the dagger. When Gu Chungrui returned, she handed him a dagger and said, "This is from Brother Zhou, and we can keep one for each of us for self-defense." Gu Chungrui opened it and took a look. "This is really good stuff, and it's as good as a specially made scalpel. But you should take it. I'm better off using my scalpel." "That's fine too, so let's just leave it here. I also think that using a boning knife is easier for my daily tasks. Also, you're making us sound like executioners," Zhouing said with a smile. "Haha, but when it's time to act, don't hesitate. Otherwise, we'll be the ones to lose our lives." Gu Chungrui continued, "It seems that when we butcher pigs, cows, and sheep in the future, we should slaughter them alive. This way, we can practice. Remember, no matter if it's a human or an animal, no matter where you attack from, you have to tilt it at about 45 degrees and stab it in the heart. Only then can you kill it in one stroke." Zhouing nodded. "I hope I don't need to use this advice in my life." Gu Chungrui didn't force her. After all, she had her interspace and many ways to defend herself. The next day, under manager Liu's astonished gaze, Zhouing put down the goods and returned to her restaurant. After Qin Zhuang and the others returned in the evening, Zhouing said, "Tomorrow, you don't have to go collect vegetables for the next 2 days. Go to other towns or counties and sell the cow and sheep heads in our ice cellar." She thought of this after leaving the patriarch's house yesterday. The cow and sheep heads at the end of the year were much more expensive than usual, especially the sheep, and it would bring them a great profit if sold individually. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.